Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Mike Borgonzi in. We had the Mike Borgonzi press conference today. We had the Chad Brinker on the record, but off camera availability today. And then we had the chatter, what you hear in and around, etc., before, after the press conferences and so on and so forth. And before I get into that and what I make of it and where the Titans go from here and everything else, I want to start off by talking about when I got out of the Titans press conference and left the Titans facility today. I saw on my phone the story of the school shooting in Antioch, at Antioch High School. And let me say this, my basketball coach, William Bellaford, is the basketball coach at Antioch High School. He teaches at Antioch High School. Now, he's okay, and I'm thankful for that, but that's how close this stuff hits to home. And look, I'm not smart enough to be able to figure this out. I don't like talking about guns in schools and kids because whatever opinion I have, half the people aren't going to have. And so if I tell you, hey, here's what I think they should do, half the people will hate me because they think the other way. But the reality is this. This is 2 times in the last 3 years that I've been on the air talking about how our heart breaks about a school shooting in our backyard. In the case of the Covenant School 2 years ago, that literally was my backyard. And in the case of Antioch High School, that is right by our radio station where we do the show from. It's a big part of our city. And so, again, it is what it is. I don't have any opinions on it other than it's absolutely heartbreaking. Okay, the football. This is where I want to start with on kind of what do we make of today? Because, again, Chad Brinker did a radio interview this morning. I did listen to it. Chad Brinker spoke at 10 a.m. to us in the local press. I've got the audio right here on my phone, but we cannot play it. Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker met with the media today at 11. I'm sure most of you heard that or watched it or whatever. And then, of course, there was the chatter. Things you hear. Things people may say not directly into the microphone, but you may hear it one way or another. So here's what I make of all of it. The Titans need to be more transparent. The moral of the story here is the Tennessee Titans need to be more transparent. I'm not going to use the word honest in this case because using the word honest would insinuate that the Titans are currently lying. Now, that is something that I have readily accused them of in the past and on occasion caught them red-handed. So instead of saying they need to be more honest with the fans and more honest with the media and more honest, but I'm going to say they need to be more transparent. Because after today, I think I know where the Titans are coming from. I think a year ago, the Titans believed in an organizational philosophy that they don't believe in today. And that is the organizational philosophy that the GM and the coach should pick the players together. And I don't think they believe that today. A year ago, I think they thought it. 2 years ago, I think they thought it. Today, I don't think the Titans really think that way anymore. And for the record, I think they're right. Again, I did do the show with Floyd for 5 years, and I'll never forget, around the hockey trade deadline, there was a day Crispy was on the program, and off the air, Floyd and Crispy were talking about the trade deadline, and Floyd asked Crispy, he said, when you were coach, did you ever go upstairs and tell management at the trade deadline, hey, I need a forward or I need a defenseman? And Crispy said, nah, I just said, you guys upstairs are doing that work. You just get them to me and I'll coach them. And Floyd, I could see the look on his face. It's like, yes, that's the way it should be. And that's what I believe. The GM picks the players. The coach coaches them. But again, A year ago, they didn't believe that. So Rand Carthon was tasked with building a team with Brian Callahan. And not only did Rand fail miserably at it, but the Titans probably realized that Brian Callahan needs to be the coach and just do the coaching. And that's where Mike Borgonzi comes in. Chad Brinker, it feels to me, is a liaison to corporate ownership. And Mike Borgonzi runs the Tennessee Titans football department. Wait for it. I think Mike Borgonzi will pick the players. Now, Chad Brinker can speak the language and relay the message to the top. And when ownership decides how much money they're going to spend on a given season, they call Chad, and Chad goes to Mike and says, we got $183 million to work with. So let's figure it out. It would almost be like, and again, this is my sense, it would almost be like hiring Floyd Reese to be John Robinson's boss. If Floyd was John's boss, this team still trades for DeMarco Murray and drafts Jack Conklin and trades up in 2018 to draft Rashawn Evans and things like that. But I can tell you right now, if Floyd Reese was John Robinson's boss, they are not picking Caleb Farley and they are not trading for Julio Jones. Floyd would have never allowed that. Now, you're also probably not going to get Jeffrey Simmons. It probably would have been a pretty tough sell. So when you put it into that context, or when I put it into that context, it makes some sense. I think. Which now brings me back to the transparency for the Titans. If the Titans had said 3 words 2 weeks ago, we effed up, when hiring Rand Carthon and putting him with Vrabel and then bringing in Brian Callahan and expecting Brian Callahan to do too much that a coach is normally not trained for, especially a first-year head coach. If they had just said, we effed up, I think most people would have understood where they were coming from. If they had come out and said, hey, Rand wasn't good enough in terms of scouting, and we see it on the roster. Rand wasn't a good enough football guy. We thought he was, but he was not a good enough football guy to put together a team that could compete. No right tackle, injured corners. If they had just said that, or if they had just said, we wanted Brian Callahan to be a coach who really aided in the personnel department, but now we just want Brian Callahan to coach. And we think Brian Callahan can coach. Again, I'm saying what they're saying. I'm not agreeing to that or disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that's why. If they had just come out and said it, I think the fans would have been okay with that. That would have made sense. Hey, last year we thought something that now in hindsight we know, yeah, you can't do that in the NFL. We thought Rand Carthon when we hired him was something that now we know Rand Carthon is not. That would have made it easier for fans to understand. Instead, there were kind of these unclear statements and corporate buzzwords and back channel reporting. And again, why not hold a press conference when Rand got fired? Transparency. And then there's the question at the press conference today that nobody could answer. And that's why Chad Brinker? Because again, when it comes to my interpretation of what Chad Brinker does, I'll use the analogy of what if Chad Brinker was Floyd Reese and Floyd Reese was hired to be John Robinson's boss, essentially to coach the coach. That would make sense, right? I think. But we understand if they were to pick Floyd Reese to be the guy to do that, we understand why they would be doing that. Because we know what Floyd Reese, we know what his resume was. With Brinker, I got to get an answer as to why. What's special about Chad Brinker? from assistant general manager under Rand Carthon to the king of Titan football, the liaison to ownership. And not one person there can answer that question. Not even Chad himself can answer that question. That is an Amy Adams Strunk question and answer, and she's not going to say. So we're just going to have to get used to that. So with all the moves, there's well, now we'll see. Because I remember 2 years ago when they hired Rand Carthon after the press conference, people said, what'd you think of Rand Carthon? And I said, you will not believe this, but I said, I like him, but we'll see. Can he draft players? I don't know. We'll see. Can Mike Borgonzi draft players? I don't know. I mean, I just heard him get up there and talk at a press conference about wanting smart, fast, dependable, and tough players. Everybody wants that. Anybody want dumb players? I'll tell you, we want the players that are as dumb as a rock. What was their GPA? 3.5? We don't want them. No. So we'll see if Mike Borgonzi knows what he's doing. But that's always this case whenever there's a press conference of, what do you think of the coach? We'll see. They could have rehired Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese, and there'd still be we'll see. But the Titans' biggest issue and why there is a lack of trust within the fan base pointed towards the organization, with all of these movements in the air and organizational philosophy changes and everything else, is that they haven't been transparent. And sometimes, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on this, sometimes I think maybe that they aren't transparent to avoid the feeling of trashing others. Let's not hold a press conference and say Rand Carthon couldn't do the job, because we don't want to throw Rand under the bus. But this is the NFL. Again, we can't worry about everybody's feelings every day. This is big boy ball. And because of that, I think it's eroded public trust in their ability to be what we really all want them to be, which is a great football team. That's what we want. That's what we're talking about. That's what we want to see on Sundays, is a great football team. Does it mean that I trust the Titans now? Now that I think I have an idea of what they're trying to do? Not really. Do I understand them more? Now that, again, I think I have an idea of what they're trying to do? We'll see. Do I believe Mike Borgonzi's running the team right now? I think. Are they going to be any good? We'll see. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Again, a whole lot of confusion for, I think, what could have been summed up by the Titans holding a press conference the day that they fired Rand and saying, we screwed up. That's all you had to say. We screwed up. We thought Rand and his relationships and the coaching staff, and they could blend in together and swing for the fences and make sweet football love on the draft night. But now we need a personnel guy to run personnel, and we want the coach to coach, which is, again, how most organizations do it. I think that's what they're doing. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. We'll hit some of your phones today here on the program early and often. 615-737-1025. There is something that I actually caught my eye, and I tweeted it today at the press conference. I was a little surprised. And yet, I actually don't think it's that big of a deal. And maybe I'm the only one. We'll do it next. Stillman Company, 1025 The Game.
Make no mistake about it. The most important people in our building are the players. We are here to help, support, and develop them on and off the field to maximize their abilities in order for us to win at a high level in this league. And this will take the efforts of the entire organization to do this. In closing, I'm excited to finally start the process of building and sustaining a championship team here. I can't wait to start working with our scouts, Coach Callahan, his staff, to build a synergy that we need to consistently compete for championships. To the people of Tennessee, we will do everything in our power to represent you in the right way and make you proud to be a Titans fan. Thank you again for this tremendous opportunity. Tighten up.
Mike Borgonzi, the new general manager of the Titans. And so I was made aware of this before the start of the press conference and noticed it myself. Amy Adams Strunk was not at today's press conference. Now, if you go back through all the other press conferences, Amy's almost always there. And I'm talking about not the firings, the hirings. I believe Amy was there. I actually don't remember off the top of my head if Amy was there when Mike Mularkey and John Robinson got hired. I do remember Steve Underwood was up there with them, and they took a picture with the helmet. They went in the bubble and all of that. We all remember about how Amy was there when Rand got hired, and then Vrabel and I got into it about Craig Aukerman. Amy was there last year when they hired Brian Callahan. And Amy Adams Strunk, the owner of the Titans, was not there today when they hired a general manager. And let me just say this. I do not care. So apparently, I heard Derek, he was furious that Amy Adams Strunk wasn't at the press conference today when they introduced Mike Borgonzi. And I got to tell you, I don't care, because I think that was kind of her way of saying, Chad Brinker's running all of this. I'm out of it. Chad Brinker is running the Titans. Now, the question that nobody but her can answer is, why Chad Brinker? Like, what makes Chad Brinker so special? How did this guy go from, being 6th or 5th or whatever in line in Green Bay to Rand Carthon's assistant general manager to now he's picking the general manager for the Titans? How did that come about? Was Chad Brinker not here the last 2 years? Were they not totally aligned to the tune of 9 wins in 2 seasons? I mean, Chad said the same thing today in the media meet and greet that he said on the radio when he was like, look, Rand, we only won 9 games in 2 years. Yes, but you won 9 games in 2 years too. But this is just going to be how it is. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Doesn't mean you have to like it. But this is going to be how it is. Again, when I talk about the fact that they changed their organizational philosophy, where, again, last year they thought one thing, collaboration and the general manager and the coach working together to pick the players, and now they think another thing, which is the general manager picks the players and the coach coaches them. If they had said, hey, we've got a totally different organizational philosophy, I think fans would have looked at that and said, okay, because they got up there and said, this is what we thought last year. We thought wrong. We're changing our approach. It sounds to me like Amy is changing her approach when she was the one who fired John Robinson. And she was the one who fired Mike Vrabel. And she was the one who put Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan together. She. And again, not that I agree with this, but I think kind of her last action, and I did ask Chad about this today, and he didn't have a very good answer. But her last action was to fire Rand, and now Chad's in charge. Again, I think that's kind of bullcrap. Like, either Chad's part of firing Rand or Chad's not part of firing Rand. And it kind of sounds like they're trying to have it both ways. But Amy is now trying to completely detach herself from the football. PK said today, he was like, well, the owner always has final say, but she doesn't want the final say. That's what Brinker's there for. The liaison to corporate. Again, I don't understand why she picked him. I don't understand what makes him so special. Again, he wasn't even GM. He was assistant GM. But it's like a buddy of mine that played in the major leagues told me when he was coming up in the minor leagues. And he said to me, he goes, a minor league pitching coach told him one time, if you always worry about the why, you'll never get the answer. If you wonder why somebody that's got a 7 ERA and you've got a 2 gets called up from AA to AAA, you'll never understand why. You might think, hey, I'm pitching better than him, but he might be left-handed and throws a sinker, and they're looking for that in their bullpen to complement what they're. He's like, you'll never. If you sit there and worry about that, you'll never get the answer, so you'll just drive yourself crazy. And that's kind of how I feel about the Titans when it comes to Amy explaining what her infatuation with Chad Brinker is. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just how it's going to be, which is unfortunate. I'd like to be clued in, but that's the reality. But the truth is, I think all of us can agree, Amy Adams Strunk doesn't know if the ball's pumped or stuffed, and so it's probably better that she not be making decisions as we saw after the John Robinson fire. So with that, I think her not being at the press conference was her way of saying, I'm out of this stuff. I don't want any part to deal with it. I don't want to be, I'm out. And you may not like it. You may want an owner who's all there, whatever. But that's just how it's going to be. Me personally, I don't care. If Amy says, hey, I am out of this, I just own it, and I sit up in the box and eat bonbons, I don't care. Just like I don't care if Herb Fritch was at the press conference when they fired John Hines. But whatever it'll be, I'm sure people say they are owed something, whatever. Again, all I want to know is why Chad Brinker? 615-737-1025 and your phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Mo is going to kick us off today on the program. Mo has been waiting patiently and is going to start us off. Go ahead, Mo.
Oh, yeah. So I've been listening to the show. I listened to the press conference today. I heard your questions and all that. Just to start off, I don't think the organization, I don't think they owe you a reason as to why they chose Chad Brinker. That is their prerogative. That is her organization. I don't think Amy needed to be there. She can do whatever she wants. She's a billionaire. And I feel like just with this whole situation and Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker, I was listening to the morning show on a different station, and they mentioned collaboration. I know that that's a buzzword that everybody uses, but if collaboration is used right in the right circumstance, it works. I don't think the Chiefs had one person making all the decisions and all of that. I think they were all working together to be able to be a potentially 3-time Super Bowl champion in the past 10 years.
Hey, Mo, do you know who the general manager was of the Kansas City Chiefs when they drafted Patrick Mahomes?
I couldn't. I'm a young guy. I'm 25 years old. And
okay, so then let me answer this question for you, Mo. It was a guy by the name of John Dorsey. Do you know what happened to John Dorsey after they drafted Patrick Mahomes?
I don't know what happened.
He got fired. You want to know why he got fired?
Why did he get fired?
Because he and Andy Reid didn't see eye to eye. So, you're telling me that in Kansas City, because in the press conference, they talked about titles don't matter in Kansas City. So then explain to me, Mo, why John Dorsey got fired in favor of Andy Reid if everybody collaborated together and pulled the rope in the same direction and titles don't matter.
I'm just saying, if football minds...
Give me the answer, Mo!
That it could be something personal. We don't know. We're not in those.
Okay,
rooms.
Mo, thank you for your call. So again, I heard that today. I heard the, titles don't matter in Kansas City. I'm like, yeah, because Andy Reid's in charge. That's why titles don't matter. Because Andy's in charge and everybody knows it. And everybody knows it because Andy won versus John Dorsey. That's why. Unbelievable. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. We're back to your phones. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. Oh, and I got to tell you, Titan fans are going to enjoy something that happened today that really doesn't have anything to do with the Titans. And I'm going to tell you, this is bad for the Titans. I'm going to tell you right now, this is bad news for the Titans. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
We have some breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Trent Baalke has been fired as the Jacksonville Jaguars general manager. If you do recall, Shahid Khan, also known as Shad Khan, the owner, of the Jacksonville Jaguars was on a Zoom press conference with Trent Baalke. They were the only two on the screen. And the media asked, if the new coach comes in and wants a new general manager, will you heed to that? And he said, absolutely. And Baalke just had to sit there and say, well, I guess I could be gone. And that is certainly the case now. Baalke out. Is that because of a head coach coming in and saying, I like this particular general manager, this is how I want to go? Or is this potentially Shad Khan realizing that maybe nobody wants to coach for his team because he's keeping Baalke, who's been around like 10 different times and has always survived bad situations?
That was McAfee earlier today. The breaking news, the Jags have fired fired Shad Khan. Can't fire him. He's the owner. Fired Trent Baalke. And I think McAfee did a good job of summing this up. On Black Monday, Doug Peterson got fired. No surprise. But Trent Baalke kept his job, and I had to triple take. I was like, guffaw. This guy survived Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco, hired Jim Tomsula, fired him, hired Chip Kelly. Then they both got fired for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Really for Kyle Shanahan. Then he goes to Jacksonville. The Jags, Shad Khan had a giant shad in his pants for Urban Meyer. Boy, I remember when they hired Urban Meyer, and I jumped up and down. I was so happy. And Trevor Matich was like, I think Urban might be good in the NFL. And the late Mark Howard, may he rest in peace, Mark Howard told me he thought Urban might be good. And I was like, no, he will not. Urban Meyer will stink in the NFL. So when Shad Khan got a Woody in his pants for Urban Meyer, the NFL said, you got to hire a real general manager. And so Shad Khan said, okay, who? And they said Trent Baalke. And so Trent Baalke was GM entitled, but Urban ran the show and Baalke was just there. Then Urban kicked the player and all that drama and the finger and the booty and all of that stuff and the jeans. And next thing you know, Urban's out, Trent Baalke's in. And then they hired Doug Peterson and won a little bit of football for one season because you fired a general manager in the middle of the year. And so I figured it was a total house cleaning. Baalke's terrible. They were going to move on and everything else and whatnot. And when they kept him, I said, oh my God, this is great. Baalke stinks. He has no business being general manager. The track record is great enough to tell you that he cannot get along with good coaches. And this is just super. Ben Johnson, who wanted final say in Washington, is not going to Jacksonville to work with Trent Baalke. Now, I have no idea if Ben Johnson's going to be any good or not. But again, it's like the good candidates that have options are not going to go work for Trent Baalke. Vrabel, I thought, would have been a slam dunk in Jacksonville. But he's not going to go work with Trent Baalke. Baalke's got a terrible reputation. So it is dysfunctional in the middle of January after two general managers have come off the board in Mike Borgonzi and John Spytek. It is dysfunctional for Shad Khan today to basically be like, yeah, I screwed up. I should have fired Trent Baalke 3 weeks ago, but my bad. It's terrible. And it's fun to laugh at. But I'm not laughing. Because just as excited as I was when Jacksonville hired Urban Meyer, because I knew Urban was too hands-on and Urban was too much of a dictator for the NFL, and I knew he was going to screw it up. Again, not in the way that he did, but I knew he was going to blow it. And they were drafting Trevor Lawrence, and I was like, oh, thank God. Maybe he'll ruin him. Jacksonville might actually hire somebody good to be general manager. I don't know who they're going to hire, but it doesn't matter. I knew Baalke wasn't good. And if Jacksonville hires somebody good, now they become a problem. And that's what worries me when it comes to the Shad Khan firing Trent Baalke. And everybody's laughing at their dysfunction today. But their dysfunction could lead to them hiring somebody good. That's bad. So I'm not celebrating this Trent Baalke news. And I'm definitely not celebrating the Trent Baalke news because, sometimes they'll say, I'll never celebrate a man getting fired. No. I will celebrate guys getting fired. Now, trust me on that. but not Trent Baalke because I worry now Jacksonville might get good. 615-737-1025. One texter says, at least the GM is going to scout the Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine game. And says, I'll be so happy when all this crap is over and you can move on to speculating about free agents and free agents that you like and draft picks you like and who the Titans should take. Well, again, I mean, I kind of do feel like for the most part this is over. Now, if we start to see some cracks in the foundation where all of a sudden we hear, Mike Borgunzi wanted to sign Johnny Joe, but Chad Brinker said no. They have to sign Jimmy Joe. If that becomes the issue, then it's going to be all that all the time. But now that they've hired Borgunzi, and again, I think Mike Borgunzi is running the Titans, I think, and Brinker's the liaison to ownership and everything else. I think we'll be able to focus on the things that matter. I really will. One texter into the text line says, why should fans care when the owner doesn't show up for the new general manager's first meeting with the press? I mean, Joe Rexroad is blowing my phone up. Basically like, you're carrying water for Amy Adams Strunk because you say you don't give a rat's ass if she goes to the press conference or not. Ugh. Joe's text. The billionaire who just got the most public money for a stadium and who will personally benefit the most from all of this doesn't think she owes her customers the respect of even showing up. I don't give a rat's ass if she wants out of the football side. Then sell, Joe Rexroad said. Again, does it make you feel better, Joe, if she gets up there and she goes, I'm very excited with Mike as our new general manager. I think Mike and Chad can put together a football team that will be competing with the top of the league in relatively short order. With Mike and Chad and Brian Callahan as our coach, we feel like it may take some time, but we're going to build a competitive team. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chad Brinker. Would that have scratched your itch? Would that have mattered? Somebody tell me, would that have mattered? Would that have mattered at all? One guy says, I thought you'd be going at them harder, Jared. I think fatherhood has softened you up. LOL. Here's what. And again, I told you that there's a bunch of different parts of this. There was the Brinker availability, which I do not think he did himself any favors other than the fact that it was not recorded, because if it was recorded, I think we would have laughed about it in all seriousness. It was something. And then you guys heard the press conference, but then the chatter afterwards and everybody talking around, everybody glad handing, talking, whatever. I get the sense that Mike Borgonzi's in charge of the team. And if that's the case, again, where Mike Borgonzi is deciding who the quarterback is, I mean, I don't know Mike Borgonzi from a jar of Vicks, and neither do you. Like, yeah, I know Trent Baalke's bad because Trent Baalke's had that job for a long time. Borgonzi's never had this job. So I have no idea if he's even good or not. That's what I said when Rand Carthon got hired. What do you want me to say? In the press conference, he spoke with a Boston accent, and I don't like it. Come on now. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Chris Sanders. It is a Wednesday. He will join us next. His reaction to the press conference and the Titans situation. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Joe tomorrow at 8:45, although they do change the time on that, so just whenever Robbie and Joe decide to do it. Mike Borgonzi and his general manager, Chad Brinker, has final say as the president of football operations. One thing that did bother me today was I saw that Easton Freeze at A to Z sat down with Brian Callahan. And I guess one of the quotes that came out of that was Callahan said, look, the way we're going to work together is it's not like somebody's going to go up and slap somebody's hand at the draft board. And then Brinker said the exact same thing today. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a rehearsed line. That we're not going to slap each other's hands at the draft board. That I guess I didn't necessarily like. But I think the Titans have empowered Borgonzi. We'll see if that ends up being what happens. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, former Titans receiver. Chris, your reaction today to the Brinker-Borgonzi press conference?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. I mean, and there's a couple of things that I like, and I'm gonna kind of discuss it right now, because if you look at the Tennessee Titans team right now, the one thing they struggled with was, they had no depth at each position. So one thing that he said that I wrote down, he said this. He said we're gonna build the roster through the draft. So that's why I think that's big, because if you look at, they got the number one pick and they need some picks. So what are they gonna do? Are they gonna stay at the number one? Or they're going to trade down and get some draft capital to make sure they build up this roster. So all that other stuff, every general manager, every president, they all say the same thing. I want to see it being done what they say they're going to do.
Okay, so here's my sense of everything.
Sure.
The Titans just won't come out and say it. But I think the Titans decided that the idea that they had that Rand Carthon could have a great relationship with the coach and that they could pick good players, I think the Titans are done with that. And I think the Titans want the GM to pick the players and they want the coach to coach them. And yes, they'll work together.
Right.
But the personnel guys do personnel and the coaches coach. Does that bother you at all? If the Titans had come out and said, hey, we think that we thought Rand Carthon was going to be good. He's not. So we're going to get somebody better. And we just want Brian Callahan to worry about coaching. Would you have a problem with that if that is what they said?
No, because here's the thing. Everybody would know their role. I mean, if you look at, when Rand Carthon came in, with Mike Vrabel, nobody knew their role. So nobody knew who made the final decision. Nobody knew who was picking the players, and nobody knew, anything that was going on. So if you just come out and say that, this is the vision. This is our identity. This is what we want to do. This is what Brinker does. This is what Brian Callahan does. Then now everybody knows that if you pick, then everybody knows who made the pick. So it's kind of like, it's not playing guessing games anymore. Now we know, okay, this guy's making the decision. This guy's picking players. This guy's developing. So if we all know that, now we got a clear-cut vision of where we're going. And I think that's what the problem is. That's what I think they should do.
Chris Sanders is our guest on the program. So if they basically just came out and said, yeah, we thought Rand was a bad general manager and we think this guy's a good general manager, would that make you feel better about it? If they were just honest about it, even though it would be throwing Rand under the bus.
But that's not a true statement. At the beginning of the year, I keep going back to April 23rd. April 23rd, that's what they said. Everybody's involved. Everybody's making decisions. So why are we saying that Rand Carthon is the one that made the bad decisions? You see what I'm saying? That's kind of a quote that's not a good quote to where to say, okay, he's the one the reason why this team was in disarray the last 2 years is because of him. But on April 23rd, we said that we're working together. So if they just come out and just say, okay, Borgonzi is making the decision on the players, then now we got a clear-cut vision of kind of where we're going. And I think that everybody needs to know that.
Okay, so what if they came out and they said, again, Chris Sanders is talking, and they said, look, we thought Rand and Callahan could run personnel. It was a disaster. So now we got this guy doing it and just Callahan's going to coach him. What if you said, well, but on April 23rd, you said that we're all making the decisions together. And they said, yes, but Rand was the one actually making them.
See, I wouldn't expect that. This is what I
so
would
if the
do.
Titans if the Titans were honest with you, because what I am telling you is what I think the truth is. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I've been wrong before.
Right, true. Right.
I just don't think the Titans want to throw Rand under the bus. That's what
Right.
I think is. So if they were honest about it, saying, "Hey, man, we just like Levis, like we thought he could do it, but he can't,"
Right.
you
Just
wouldn't be okay
honest.
with that.
The only no, it's just kind of a difficult question to really answer. If they would have came out and said we blew it, but we're going in a different direction with a different general manager, then I can handle that. But when you say, okay, Rand is the reason why, we had these 2 bad years, then basically you're saying he's the problem. And I think that when you said on April 23rd that we're all in collaboration together, then why is one guy getting fired? But if you just came out and just said, you know what, we blew it. We didn't pick the right guys. Free agent was terrible. We thought the quarterback was going to do something, but he didn't, and we're going in a different direction. Then now it's an easier pill to swallow, because now you said that didn't work out. It's okay. Then I'm going to this person. It's kind of like this. Just say you go through a marriage. It didn't work out, but now you said, okay, I'm not going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on the task at hand. That's kind of what I'm saying.
I want to ask you about an interaction I saw today, because I was kind of caught me off guard a little bit. So before the press conference, Mike Borgonzi was there with his family, and he was kind of sitting there. And, we had just come from a press availability with Chad Brinker, and then you walk in, and Borgonzi's got his suit on, and then Brinker comes in, and he's got his suit on. And then Brian Callahan comes in, and he's got a suit on. And Brian Callahan and Bert Nihill were kind of sitting on the other side of the first row. But before the press conference, Callahan came over with Borgonzi, and they kind of gave each other the bro hug, right? Like the high five, and then the bro hug. So they gave each other the bro hug. And as I saw them bro hug each other, I thought to myself, this looks like 2 dudes meeting each other for the first time ever. This guy was hired on Friday. Now, he said in his press conference, I've had some conversations with Brian or whatever. But I saw them bro hug. And I'm like, that looks like 2 guys meeting for the first time ever. And one of the TV reporters in front of me, not going to name names, Jill Jelnick, but one of the TV reporters in front of me turned around and gave me the like with it did look like 2 guys meet for the first time ever. What do you make of that?
Oh, I mean, if that was the case, then we already started off on first base that somebody told a story that they've been talking. So that's strike one right there.
Well, they could be talking, but have never actually met in person. Again,
yeah.
But what was Borgonzi not in the office this week?
That's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, even if you talk to somebody on the phone, you still gonna greet them like you actually know them. But if they just actually talk to each other basically for the first time on that day, that's no disrespect, but that's kind of weird. I mean, because when you're talking if you're saying behind the closed doors that this is our guy, they've talked about some good things, but then they hug each other and they act like they don't know each other. You don't want that thing to be a red flag, and then later on down the road, somebody gets stabbed in the back again.
What if Borgonzi and Callahan don't know each other? Again, it sounded like he said that they've got mutual friends or something.
Sure.
Do you think there's any shot this could work out? Like that Borgonzi could sit down with Callahan and be like, you know what, the guy's a good coach. Let's get him some good players, and on we get. Is there any way that could work out if they don't have the prior relationship?
See, that's the key. You got to have the key is the relationship. And here's what I would do. Even if I didn't know Borgonzi and I came in, and say if I was a head coach and I was Brian and you came into this organization, what I would do is I would have them come into my office and I'll shut the door with nobody around. And we would look at each other and say, listen, we want to build this roster. We want to make this team great. We want to make the fans proud of each other. What we need to do, let's put our pride to the side and let's work together. I know that sounds corny and cliche or whatever, but if 2 guys can work together, you can do some great things. So, because the thing about it is you don't want to be in an organization where you have so many individuals, but you're claiming to be a family. So what these guys need to do, Borgonzi and Brian and Brinker and all these guys, is sit their pride by the door, sit in the office and say, let me learn from you. Let me take what you do well and take what I do well, and let's put it in the middle and let's build something great together. So if they do it like that and have that type of attitude, then you're going to take off and soar and do some great things. But if we're back at square one, where it's my way or no way, and you're not willing to learn from anybody, we'll set this franchise back in 5 years because of guys that want to work together.
Okay, last one for you. Chris Sanders, where we sit today, what do you want them to do at the quarterback position? Take one of the 2 quarterbacks, sign somebody? What do you want them to do?
This, I think, I mean, with Shador and Ward, I think that if you do draft a quarterback, he better be a Hall of Famer. He better be the franchise quarterback for 20 something years. He better be that guy. But if in my position, if he's not the guy, and if he's just not just an impact player, I'm gonna trade that pick, get some more players, get a quarterback in the free agent wise, and kind of build that way.
Chris Sanders, as always, on our program. Chris, great stuff.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you, man. Peace out.
Yep, Chris Sanders on the program. Again, the bro hug that I saw from Brian Callahan to Mike Borgonzi, again, the bro hug was like a bro hug of two guys meeting for the first time. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Boy, I wish y'all could have heard the Chad Brinker on the record session with kind of an off the record feel to it. We'll hit some of the highlights. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. The Titans hired Mike Borgonzi today to be the general manager of the Titans. Chad Brinker is the chief football executive. Brian Callahan is the coach. And today, Chad Brinker had his media availability at 10 a.m., but we talked at length yesterday about how fakakta it sounded like these rules were that they wanted to put on us for this availability. So I'm just going to lay it all out again. We talked about it at length yesterday. I went crazy yesterday. And I stand by my craziness. But the Titans decided that the Chad Brinker 10 a.m. availability was on the record, but not on camera, and we can't give you the audio. In fact, during the break, I was listening to the audio just to kind of a mental refresh of what was said and everything else. So I have the audio. Like, I listened to it just 20 seconds ago, but I can't play it for you. Those are the rules. And again, as I started the show today, the Titans, I think, would have a lot better public standing if they would be significantly more transparent. But this is how they want to do it. And so when people don't have faith in them, they don't need to cry to anybody but themselves. But let me tell you about this Chad Brinker on the record session that had an off the record feel to it. It was amazing today. And I mean that in a funny way. Like, we grilled this guy. Like, I'm telling you. He walked in. So they have a conference room at the facility, the Eddie George conference room. And we went into Eddie George conference room, and everybody was seated around the table. There was probably 20 of us seated around the table. And Chad Brinker was seated right in the middle of this conference room table. I mean, I'm directly across from him. Gentry Estes is to my right. Paul and Sam Phelan are to his right. And, I mean, there were probably like 20 of us around. And this is what I would envision. I've never been deposed before. Knock on wood. This is what I would envision a deposition is, at least from what I've seen on television. Now, I'm not sure that anything really important came out of it, but I mean, Chad was on the defensive from the jump. He sat down, and again, like he said, something along the lines of, hey, really want to spend time to get to know everybody, blah, blah, blah. First question came from Buck was, okay, so why does Rand Carthon not have a job, but everybody else still does? Well, Amy wants me to be the chief executive, and I mean, it was, and everybody was asking point-blank questions. And I asked about, okay, so you said you and Rand were aligned, but Rand got fired. And you didn't. And his response was that he had responsibility last year, but not authority last year. That was kind of his line as far as, okay, well, why is Rand getting punished for the record? But it seems like Brinker got promoted. At one point, Chad Brinker asked, because we went tooth and nail about this whole, like, okay, so you have final say, but, and Brinker was trying to say the entire time, without just saying it, like he didn't want to pin himself in a corner, but he tried to say, hey, I have final say, but Mike Borgonzi is going to make these decisions, and I'm not going to use the final say. And so then at one point he said that Mike Borgonzi will be the one making the draft picks. So I asked, no. He said at one point, he goes, all right, does everybody get this? Like, is everybody now in total agreement? Have we cleared this up with how the Tennessee Titans are going to be run? And I said, no. I said, because you just said that Borgonzi's making the draft picks. But if he wants to draft somebody that you don't want to draft, and even Gentry sitting next to me, he backed it up. He was like, yeah, if you guys have two different opinions, I mean, who's going to? And you could hear Brinker's, okay. So I understand why they didn't put it on camera. Because, again, it was like a deposition. He was getting grilled. Now, I don't know if he would have gotten grilled at the same extent had it been on camera. And what you have to remember about press conferences are the guy in a press conference setting, the ones that you watch on TV, the guy that is the subject of the interview, the coach, the general manager, the owner, the whatever, they have the microphone. Similarly to when I have the microphone and a caller is on and we're arguing, I can cut the caller off. But in a case of a press conference, you ask a question seated out in the seats, they argue back and forth, everyone's going to hear the person with the microphone, and that's going to drown out everybody else. This wasn't that way. This was inside of a conference room. And I think I understood what Brinker was trying to get at. Like, I understood that they wanted like a more kind of intimate, let's try to shoot it straight setting, and it felt like a deposition. Like, I felt how I would envision a deposition being like if I was a lawyer. The one thing I guess I didn't like was I heard a lot of the same things that he said this morning in an interview over again, regurgitated out there. And it felt to me at length. Again, it's one thing to say, hey, these are the core principles. This is what we're going to say. You know, a stump speech in campaigning. It's another thing to tell the same stories and drop the same names over and over again. And I felt like there was some of this, but it was something. I mean, I will not forget what he was like. Are we all in agreement that we all understand now how the Tennessee Titans, the roster is run? And I was like, no. Like, because you just said to him that Mike Borgonzi's making the picks, but then you're the one that has the final say. So what do you do if it doesn't one way? I thought it was pretty funny for whatever it was worth. So that was, if everybody wanted to know how that went. Now, there was one kind of narrative that came from that I didn't pick up on. And I'm not sure I totally believe when it comes to free agency. Like, I don't think the Titans are going to avoid free agency like the plague. This ain't going to be my understanding, this ain't going to be Jerry Jones this past offseason. Like, they're still going to sign free agents. They're just not going to go get injured free agents with bad knees like they did last year, from what I've been told. 615-737-1025. We'll get back to your phones at 615-737-1025, plus the question I asked of Chad Brinker in the press conference. And while it's easy to say today, will they be able to do it when push comes to shove? We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Chad, when it comes to the draft picks, Mike says that he's got the final say on the draft picks. But if, for instance, with this number 1 pick, if you had a strong conviction that the guy that Mike liked was not the answer, would you be able to overrule Mike on that draft pick?
Like I said before we talked, this is going to be a we decision. You got to understand the process that we go through in all this. We're going to be in that draft room starting in when we get back from the All-Star games. No daylight for the month of February. Our process is, we get in the room, we start with the offensive tackles, and we go from the top of the draft board all the way to the bottom, and we watch 3 or 4 games on every guy and start building the board. Once we get to the draft, you let the board talk to you. The work has been done at that point, and you allow the board to talk to you. But ultimately, like I said before, Mike is hired to build this roster, and he's going to get every opportunity to build the roster.
That was Chad Brinker today. Again, Mike Borgonzi is going to draft these players, but you have final say. So if it's a big pick, like the number 1 pick, and you don't believe in it, what are you? Well, you got to understand the process. There's going to be no stone unturned. These decisions are going to be made before we're on the clock. Well, I didn't say when you're on the clock. So I followed up again, wanting to know, and this is what I really want to know. If you hire Mike Borgonzi and Mike Borgonzi says he's in charge of the draft and you say he's in charge of the draft, if that's the case, when he's going to want to do something that you in your heart just do not believe, are you going to let him do it? So I followed up. You guys are setting the board and you're deciding, okay, here's who we like at number 1. If he has a strong conviction for who number 1 is and you don't believe that, who then goes in the number 1 slot?
We will work through that together as a team. I know what you're trying to get to. I understand the question, but that's not always how it works inside the NFL building. Mike just kind of talked about that and how the process worked with Andy Reid and Brett Veach and the group over there. It's not going to be any different here. We're all going to be involved in working through that, and we want to be in a room. We want diversity of thought in the room. You want to have healthy debate. You want to go through those things together. And, if Mike sees something in a player that I'm not seeing, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and watch more tape on that player and vice versa. We're just trying to get to the right decision for the Tennessee Titans. And that's why I believe this partnership is going to work. We both grew up in the same system. And it's not that we're always going to think the same, but I think the process will mine that out, and we'll eventually get to that point where we agree on what we're picking, whether it's number 1 or whatever round that is.
Okay. So the answer there is we'll go back and watch more tape. If we're in disagreement, then we will come to an agreement. That's not how this works. And I do kind of laugh when it's like Brinker's kind of telling me, hey, this idea that he could have a really strong conviction in a certain player and I wouldn't have that same conviction. We work through these things together. That's not how it works. No, that's exactly how it works. And I know that's how it works because I worked with somebody who did make those picks. And so I know in this instance that I'm right. I know. Again, this is very simple, right? You have the number 1 pick. Let's use Cam Ward as an example. I have no opinion right now on Cam Ward. I guess from what I've heard from people I trust, I've heard on Cam Ward. I see it, but which does not make me feel very good about drafting Cam Ward. But let's use Cam Ward as an example. If Mike Borgonzi is pants off for Cam Ward and Chad Brinker, when he watches the tape, when he goes to the Shrine Bowl, when he goes to the Senior Bowl, when he sits with Cam at the Combine, he's looking at it and he says, I don't see it. Mike loves him. He thinks that, hey, in Kansas City, we worked with the mechanics, but I remember when I was in the meeting in Green Bay and we were drafting Jordan Love and we looked at this other guy with bad mechanics and we couldn't do that. I just don't see it. What do you do? And there's a story of a former Titan. I guess he was an Oiler more than he was a Titan. He actually never played for the Titans, by the name of Bryant Mix in 1996. The Tennessee Titans drafted Eddie George in the first round of the 96 draft. In the second round, they drafted Bryant Mix. Ian, what do you know of Bryant Mix?
He was a bust.
He was a bust.
That's about a defensive lineman bust.
He had 1 career sack, 1 sack, and 8 tackles. And the reason I know who Bryant Mix is, because I was 6 years old during the 96 draft. The reason I know who Bryant Mix is because Floyd told me that he drafted Bryant Mix in his 3rd draft as general manager because the entire coaching staff and the entire scouting staff loved him. And that he did it, and everybody in the room kept saying, he's so good. He's so good. We got to take him. And Floyd was sitting there thinking to himself, gosh, if everybody thinks Bryant Mix is the guy, they must be right, and I must be wrong. And he drafted Bryant Mix. And that was a decision that he was never going to repeat again, where he didn't believe in a player and he was going to draft the player. Which takes us back to the Borgonzi Brinker scenario. Now, I would like to believe that if Chad Brinker absolutely, positively did not believe in somebody, but Mike Borgonzi absolutely, positively did, that they would be able to find a way to come together in agreement. But if not, Chad Brinker has to make a decision, and he's got to make the decision today, which is, in that scenario, do you exercise the power that has been given to you by the owner of the Tennessee Titans? Or do you go with the gut of the guy that you hired? And again, I would like to think that Brinker hired Borgonzi, who does have a resume that would be this guy's qualified to be a GM. Doesn't mean he's going to be a good GM or not, but he has a resume. A gazillion years as the assistant general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs. That's as good of a resume right now as you could have if you hadn't already been in the NFL as a general manager. I would like to think that Brinker will go with the guy he hired's gut. That said, if I was in Brinker's position and Mike Borgonzi was banging the table for one of these guys, and I didn't see it, it'd be very hard for me to put my ass on the line if I didn't believe. So it's easy to say in a press conference today, we'll figure it out. We'll work it out. It'll be okay. And maybe it's easy to say, hey, if push did come to shove, and he absolutely loved Cam Ward, and what was it Rick Spielman said? He thinks he's a better version of Tyrod Taylor. And Chad Brinker thinks like Rick Spielman does, for instance. He thinks he's a better version of Tyrod Taylor. So if we draft him with the first pick and he's Tyrod Taylor, we're fired. Like, we all know that, right? So if we draft him, you're wrong, we're all fired. But I put it on you, so you go do it. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that in that scenario. And that's the problem. That's the problem with all of this. Well, technically he's got final say, but he's saying he's running the draft and he's this, that. That's the problem. When it comes to who's actually in charge and who's not and who's etc. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. We'll get into them. Stillman and Company, your reaction to the Mike Borgonzi press conference. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 again. What does that mean, full authority over free agency? I thought Chad had full authority on the roster.
Well, I have full authority over the process. Now, Chad will break tie if there's ties. He's in charge of the 53, and that's why that is put in there. But I'll have full authority over running the meetings, the draft. I will pick the players.
That was Mike Borgonzi. Ian, does that clear things up for you?
Sure.
I mean, so you said you'll have full authority over free agency, but hold on, wait a minute. I thought Chad Brinker's the one who's got final say. Well, I'll have full authority to run the meeting.
But it's in there that Chad has final over the 53.
I mean, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, let's go to your phones here on the program. See, this reminds me of the Vrabel and Rand Carthon shotgun marriage. Who has final say? And I am convinced that Amy told Vrabel and Rand, hey, you two will work together and you'll figure it out. And Rand said, yes, sir, Miss Amy. And Vrabel, originally kicking and screaming, said, fine, I'll do it. But you never, once push starts coming to shove, then all of a sudden, he wanted the guard. He wanted Andre Dillard, he this, he that. And that's what happened. I told somebody today, I said, look, I think that if they had won Vrabel and Carthon that first year, if they go to New Orleans in week 1 and Ryan Tannehill doesn't crap his pants, I'm trying to think of some of the other games that they lost, if there was like that field goal there or whatever. But if they had started the year 4-2 instead of 2-4, I think it would have been, oh yeah, Rand, he picks the best players. Oh no, Mike, he coaches them the best. But when you start losing, then it becomes his fault. So I do right now, it's, well, Chad will have the final say on the roster, but, I will also be running the meetings. And, my thing is I think Borgonzi's like, Chad told me I'm going to be the one in charge here. I just can't say it. Well, when push comes to shove, then what? Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jared in Spring Hill is up next here on our program. Jared, thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Again, the Titans never disappoint with an epically catastrophic press conference. At least that's how I got. That's how it
catastrophic.
Came off to me. But I have a couple reasons here.
I have to ask, and I will let you get to your reasons. I have to ask.
Go ahead.
Do you think that this press conference was as catastrophic as the Rand Carthon press conference the day that Mike Vrabel got fired?
No, but I just figured they would have been more prepped with their pre-conference because, again, when the owner – I'm going to get into my first one. When the owner doesn't show up, does that validate or invalidate all of the wordings and the word salads and the ball washing that's been going on? So there's some of that going on. It's not as bad as – I will say it's not as bad as what Rand's was back in the day. But, again, I figured they would have had it prepped. And, again, just not dodging or trying to tell things without telling things, being so cryptic. So I did like the fact that Amy wasn't there. To me, she has to, like, if I'm the owner, right, I would want to be there. I would want to be out facing the music and getting my face out there. They've priced me and a bunch of other people out, so the only thing I have left is my 2 cents on the matter. So they're going to get it now more than ever. A great quote. Let the board talk to us. Is this a Ouija board and we're all in the dark and we're trying to scare each other? Because you have control of the board. You have control of the board with the first pick. That's what we're most concerned with. And it's just very frustrating that it just seems like it's convoluted, diluted, and it's just going to be more backstabbing because when the good things go good, this guy's going to get good things go bad. Or when bad things go bad, this guy's going to get it. And I'm really worried about how we're going to do without Rand's super accurate board last year where he projected Michael Penix going number 8. So I don't know what this draft is going to entail, but I do know it's the Titans that they're going to fumble the handoff. And another question, like this is kind of for you to chew on, Jared, because I caught most of the press conference and both of them said discipline. There's going to be discipline in the process. We're going to be disciplined when we're evaluating things. What is the discipline? And, like, where is this discipline coming from? Because Brinker's still around. If he's still using that same discipline to bring in similar people to get a similar result, which is probably what's going to happen, then, what is going to change? You know, do you understand
so
what
I'm going to
saying?
answer this question for you. I'm going to answer this,
yeah.
and then you guys tell me, and I appreciate your call, Jake. I'm going to answer this question, and you guys tell me if you think this is fair or not. When it comes to discipline, and the idea of discipline didn't pop into my head as much, I have a big worry that the Titans are going to avoid free agency like the plague. Because last year, they participated in free agency, and they signed a bunch of guys, and it didn't work out. So then I think there's a narrative that is free agency, bad. And I don't believe that. Because the Washington Commanders in free agency added Dante Fowler and his 10.5 sacks. Frankie Louvu, their inside linebacker. Jeremy Chin, their starting safety. Tyler Biotish, their starting center. Nick Allegretti, their starting right guard. I mean, they added, I think, 26 free agents. And that includes guys that play a real role. Noah Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus at wide receiver, playing a big role for the Commanders. Andrew Wiley, their right tackle, was with Mike Borgonzi in Kansas City. The Washington Commanders, outside of the quarterback and one of the corners, the Washington Commanders are largely built via free agency. And I know Jaden Daniels is the star of that team, but it's not a one-man team. I mean, he's got to throw the ball to somebody. So I get it that everybody's sitting here, but boo, free agency. But I am scared to death that that's how the Titans are going to approach free agency this year. So when they talk about discipline, I think what they're talking about is, hey, here are our targets that fit what we're trying to do. Here's target A, B, and C. And if we don't get A, we move on to B. And if we don't get B, we move on to C. And if we don't get C, then we do not force it. Whereas I think this past year in free agency, it was, we got the money. Oh, well, we didn't sign a defensive tackle and an inside backer that we thought we were going to re-sign. They went to the Texans and said, let's go get Calvin Ridley. Because Rand told that story that when they found out that they weren't getting Azeez and they weren't getting Danico Autry, that they turned around and said, well, we got the money for Azeez and Danico. Let's go get Calvin Ridley. And that is a lack of discipline. That is just spending to spend, which the bad teams have done for years. So when it comes to the discipline, that's what I think they're talking about. And again, I said this from the jump. I think people would trust the Titans if they were more transparent and less worried about hurting people's feelings. Because if they just came out and said, Rand Carthon was the problem, he was in charge, and now this guy's in charge, and Chad's going to be his boss and the liaison to ownership, then I think people would be like, okay, yeah, Rand Carthon stunk. If they were to say, hey, last year, we thought that it really mattered that Brian Callahan have his knees and elbows in deep in free agency. Now we don't believe that. Now we believe that the coach should coach, which is something that I've believed forever. I think Mike Vrabel's a good coach. I think Mike Vrabel's going to fail in New England because I believe that Mike Vrabel thinks he knows personnel. Mike Vrabel doesn't know personnel. I worked with a guy who was a coach, who knew personnel, who did personnel. And the thing he told me about personnel is it is the job of the personnel guy, the general manager, to protect the team from the coach. When Bill O'Brien traded 3 first-round picks or whatever in order to get Laramie Tunsil and then traded away DeAndre Hopkins, Floyd told me, he goes, that's the kind of stuff the GM is designed to keep the coach from doing. So that's the discipline that I think they're talking about. Though, again, I don't know if it's actually going to work or not. And I don't know if when push comes to shove, if they're going to be disciplined. Like, I don't know if they're going to say, hey, we're going to be disciplined. And then on the third day of free agency, some tight ends out there that they didn't think was going to be out there that they don't have a great grade on. But Brian Callahan's like, if we could just get this tight end. Well, we do have $8 million to spend. So should we do it? Or Should we not do it? I mean, I don't know. What do you think we should do? I don't know. Yeah, let's do it. Don't do it. Oh, you know. More your phone, 615-737-1025. Your reaction here on the program. And, boy, a lot of people want to weigh in on Brinker. So we'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Got to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And there are no questions when it comes to who is calling the shots at Hiller. And I like that because Jimmy Hiller is one of the most admired CEOs, was recently named amongst the most admired CEOs because of the way he truly cares for his team and his clients. And I know that because I use Hiller at my home. That's right. When we decided to redo a storage closet in the garage and turn it into a real room with 417 square feet, you bet your fanny I got Hiller in there. How are we going to get power in there? What are we going to do with the HVAC? Hiller, Hiller, Hiller. And again, Hiller takes care of the customers on every job, every time. And that's why they stand behind their work with 100% satisfaction of happy you will be or the service is free. Learn more at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Andy. Hiller, call the Hat Fish Truck today.
Mike, you said you didn't give much thought to the way the executive structure is kind of put together now. Why isn't that a big deal for you?
No one really. The 53, it's not a concern. It wasn't a concern in Kansas City. That never came up. There was never a point where we're sitting in the draft room and someone overruled someone because we were taking a player that, the person with the 53 was in charge of. That never happened. We were a collaborative group. We had a cabinet of decision makers there that every move that we made in Kansas City was as a group. So, coming here with Chad and knowing Chad, that's the same situation when I was working with Brett. We're going to come and make the best decisions for the team. So it never really crossed my mind.
There were no problems when we were in Kansas City. We were in a draft room and everybody was in agreement all the time. You know what? I hear that and I'm like, so then why did John Dorsey get fired after the 2017 draft? And Andy Reid's hand-picked guy, Brent Veach, became general. I got a hard time with that one. And again, I think sometimes they bank on people not remembering stuff. Like today, Borgonzi kept talking about Nick DeVito and Anthony Fasano as, hey, when we rebuilt the Chiefs, we went out, we didn't get high-price free agents. We got Nick DeVito and Anthony Fasano because those were the glue guys that we needed. And I'm like, yeah, you also got Alex Smith. Like you also traded 2 second-round picks for a starting quarterback. A little different. Dylan and Antioch's up next here on the program. Dylan, thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. Yeah, what I'm trying to figure out here, Chad's already gone on record and said he breaks ties with the 53-man roster, that he has final say. And he won't say that again. And why won't he say that again? What happened behind the scenes is what I'm trying to figure out. I wonder if either of these guys know who actually has final say. It's like Chad came out and said that, and Amy said, oh, we're trying to act like we're actually doing a real GM search. You can't just be saying that. And then she told, I feel like it's more of this collaboration, and behind the scenes, she's preaching that. And I feel like neither of these guys know who really actually has final say because she doesn't want there to ever be a disagreement. And I don't think it can work like that. And I agree with Joe and D-Mace. She should have been there just for optics, man. Just for optics. Just act like you give a crap about this team, about this city. But,
I couldn't give
Jared,
a rat's ass if she was there. What would you prefer?
I know you don't, but I think it makes a difference. I think it makes.
What would you prefer, though? In all seriousness, what would you prefer? Would you prefer if she were to, say, okay, I'm going to be there and I'm going to be in on every decision, or if she said, I'm not going to be there and I'm going to be out of every decision? Which would you prefer?
You know what? She wouldn't even have to say anything. She could make it so easy. She could just say, hey guys, yeah, he's the GM. Chad breaks ties. Just let us know. Because it's just going to be people throwing each other under the bus, just like it was.
But I just gave you two options and you didn't answer the question.
Wait, give me the two options again. Hold on.
Okay. So one option is Amy says, okay, I'll be at the press conference. I'll speak, but I'm in on every decision. She becomes Jerry Jones. The other is, I'm not going to be there and I'm not going to be in on the decisions. Don't bother me. Which would you prefer she be?
Yeah, give me number two. Just come out and say it. Just go to the press conference, say, hey, I'm going to be, these are the guys, and this is the only time you're going to see me. Have a good season. That's fine. Give me number two.
So she's done that without actually being at the press conference. Thank you for your call, Dylan. That's what she's telling people she's doing. And I'm actually okay with it. See, here's the difference between me and you. I don't look at Amy not being there today as a sign that Amy Adams Strunk is a bad owner. I look at Amy Adams Strunk deciding in the middle of the 2022 season, with her team sitting at 7-5 and in first place of the division, coming off of 3 straight playoff appearances, 4 in the last 5 years, and a 90+% chance of winning a 3rd straight division title. And in the middle of the year, just saying, screw the GM. He's fired. And then sending Mike Vrabel out to go talk about it. That's what I got a problem with. Because that Titan team, I know they finished 7-10. That Titan team was 7-3. They went to Green Bay and they beat them. And people forget about this. But Danico Autry got hurt that night. And I remember exactly when it happened because Tierre Tart had faked an injury about 3 plays before, and the Green Bay fans booed because Aaron Rodgers loves to rush everybody to the line. Aaron had already thrown a touchdown pass in that Thursday night game by rushing everybody to the line. He hit Christian Watson in the corner of the end zone, I believe, at the end of the first half. And so Tierre Tart faked an injury, and then 3 plays later, Danico went down, and the entire Packer fan base booed because they thought that they were faking an injury to slow Aaron down, and instead Danico was really hurt. And then they went to Philly and they got smoked, and David Long got hurt, and Nate Davis got hurt, and Ryan Tannehill got hurt. And at that point, it was like, okay, now the thing's starting to fall. But she fired the general manager. That is bad ownership. If you want to fire him at the end of the year. I don't think that the Seahawks decided right there after the last game, yeah, we're going to fire Pete Carroll. I think they probably made up their mind at some point during the year. And then they waited for after the season and fired Pete Carroll. That's what they should have done here. I mean, it's crazy talk. But that was the bad ownership moment. Not showing up today. Who cares that she wasn't there today? Again, she's told you with her actions that Chad Brinker is the person she trusts to run the Titans from the standpoint of the day-to-day operations that would need ownership's check or minus. I don't understand why. Chad Brinker wouldn't be my choice. But she's told you that's what she's doing, and hopefully she's staying out of it. Hopefully. Let's go to Jack, who's up next here on our program. Jack, thank you for calling and thank you for waiting.
You're welcome. You know, to me, I could care less who's deciding what down there. As far as I'm concerned, it's a brilliant strategy by the Titans to take your mind off of just what a plane crash that team is. And it definitely come from the top because Brinker had that same look on his face that Rand had when he had to come out and explain where Mike Vrabel lives. So I think it's brilliant that they can have you all upset about one thing and forget all about the 500-pound gorilla in the room.
I don't think I've forgotten about how bad this team sucks. Thank you for your call, Jack. I don't think that I've forgotten about it, and I don't think you've forgotten about it either. I think they know this team sucks. I think they know this team is in some deep, deep, deep trouble. I mean, the reality is this team needs a quarterback, and I'm not sure there is a quarterback out there to have. Yeah, I mean, that's as daunting of a task as you could encounter for whatever that's worth. So this idea of they've distracted you from how bad the team is, I don't think they've done that. Now, I don't think they've distracted us from how bad the team is. I think last year they obfuscated how good the team was going to be when they overlooked right tackle and they went out there and signed a bunch of injured corners and they pumped up Will Levis. That was a little over the top. But this idea, I mean, somebody help me out on did we forget that the Titans were bad? 615-737-1025. Maybe I'm wrong for believing this. But after today's press conference, I got a sense about something that, if it's the case, I can accept. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So today, Chad Brinker had a media availability. You guys could not hear it or see it. You could hear the quotes that came out of it, but you could not hear it or see it. And that's really sad because it really, truly was like a Chad Brinker deposition. Like, it really was like, it felt like he was under oath, and we were the lawyers, and boy, were we lighting him up, which was fun. And then there was the Mike Borgonzi press conference, you know, where the people clap when the guy walks in, and they this and they that and everything else. And then there was just some chatter, you know, afterwards, everybody, you know, oh, nice to meet you, oh, this, that, other, whatever. I actually didn't even meet Mike Borgonzi today, but just those things happen. And I walked away with a sense. So this is a sense I'm going to share with you. And I could be wrong. But this is the sense that I have right now with the Titans. Mike Borgonzi is going to run the Tennessee Titans. For what you care about, Mike Borgonzi is going to be in charge. I'm not going to be one of these people that tells you final say doesn't matter, because it does. At the end of the day, there's one player they can pick with the number one overall pick. And somebody has to decide. Somebody, ultimately, there could be three guys, like three players that can, at the end of the day, somebody's got to make that choice. And while I think Chad Brinker technically has that final say, I don't think he's really ever going to use it. So maybe against my better judgment, I'm actually starting to entertain the idea that Mike Borgonzi is running the Tennessee Titans. Now, will Mike Borgonzi run the Tennessee Titans? Well, I have no clue. Because I don't know football at that level. None of you, for the most part, know football at that level. And I don't know Mike Borgonzi from a jar of Vicks. I don't know if Mike Borgonzi was sitting there with Brent Veach as the guy in the room that said, yo, Brent, look at this quarterback out of Texas Tech. Or if Mike Borgonzi was, yo, Brent, do you want mayonnaise on your sandwich? I'm going to go make one. I don't know what he did in Kansas City, and neither do you. Again, I think he was asked today by Paul if there was an instance where he can kind of put a stamp down on a player that he was responsible for, and he gave kind of a corporate answer that we were all in on it together, or I can't give you one, or I can't claim them, or whatever. So I have no idea if Borgonzi is going to run the team effectively. Neither do you. Borgonzi got up there and he says he wants smart, fast, dependable, good players. Whoa. I mean, who wants dumb, slow, and unreliable players? But can you get the smart, fast, dependable, good players? Well, in Kansas City, they were able to. I don't care about Kansas City. Andy Reid calls the shots in Kansas City. The Titans don't have Andy Reid, in case you guys didn't notice. But if Mike Borgonzi were hired today without a babysitter, if they had done what I wanted them to do, which was clean house, get rid of Rand, get rid of Chad, and I kind of, you know, as I kept saying over time, I was not against Callahan, but I was against the idea of being married to Callahan because a lot of you say, can't fire a coach after 1 year. And I'm like, do whatever you want. But let the new guy pick. If Mike Borgonzi got the job from Amy Adams Strunk with no Chad Brinker in the middle, and he decided, you know what, I like Brian Callahan. Let's give Brian Callahan a shot at coach. I'd be okay with it. Because Mike Borgonzi has a resume that says, hey, this guy's ready to be a general manager in the NFL. It does not say that he will be a good general manager in the NFL because there is no way to know if anybody will be a good general manager until they actually are. With the caveat that Borgonzi has Chad Brinker as a babysitter. Last August, the Titans played the Seahawks in the preseason. And Chad Brinker went up in the booth. And Charles Davis and Paul Burmeister were interviewing him, president of football operations. And that's where our world famous, my job is to service the head coach cut that we love to play all the time. That's where that came up. But I remember being in Toronto, seeing Chad Brinker in the booth, thinking, what? Why is he in the booth? I thought he was in charge of who mows the grass. I thought he was in charge of, do we go Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi? I mean, he's in the booth. He's talking about watching 4 hours of tape. He's all these things. And I go, here's what it looks like. It looks like Rand Carthon has a babysitter. And I said that, and oh my God, people were mad. Holy crap, were people mad. I mean, again, I'm out of the country, and I'm getting tweets about how I'm racist and how it's personal with Rand and I. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to figure out what the hell this guy does. You guys tell me he works for Rand. Doesn't look like he's working for Rand. It looks like he's Rand's babysitter. That's what it looks like. Well, here, again, that's what this looks like. That Mike Borgonzi was hired to run the Tennessee Titans. Chad Brinker is the liaison to ownership, and he's the babysitter. Hey, man, don't go light your hand on fire. And I'm sure Mike Borgonzi thinks he doesn't need a babysitter, but it's either take the job with the babysitter or maybe don't get an NFL job. But my sense is, and maybe I will regret this, when the Titans take Cam Ward with the first overall pick, and I will regret it because one day Chad Brinker will get fired, Borgonzi will stay on, and it'll come out that it was Chad Brinker who wanted Cam Ward, and I'll look like the dumbass for thinking that Mike Borgonzi is going to run the Titans. But after today, that is my sense, that Mike Borgonzi is going to run the Titans. And the one big, humongous distinction between Rand Carthon's situation and Mike Borgonzi's situation as it relates to the babysitter, Chad Brinker, is that Chad didn't hire Rand. Chad did hire this guy. And if Chad hired this guy, he A, probably trusts this guy more than he would have trusted Rand, but B, he's got more invested in this guy being right than he did Rand. Because Amy might love him today. Again, I still can't figure out why Chad Brinker, like what about Chad Brinker is so great that Amy Adams Strunk, even after he has been here for 2 years and they've won 9 games, when he was a co-conspirator or part of it, like what's so special about Chad Brinker? I don't get it. Well, he went to business school. Woo. So did my buddy Scott Fischel. And I love Scott Fischel, but the last person that you want making decisions for the Tennessee Titans is Scott Fischel. So I don't understand what Chad Brinker did that makes him so special, but I guess he is. But again, my sense is he's just there to babysit Mike Borgonzi. And then to do things like pick out the carpet in the players' lounge at the new stadium, things that none of us give a rat's ass about. We'll see if that's actually what happens. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There was one line that Borgonzi repeated a couple times where he was talking about how he's going to actually build the team. And I heard it, and I rolled my eyes. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
beyond drafting Patrick Mahomes, obviously,
Yeah.
what was kind of the shift in culture there that turned them around and made them a contender each year?
Yeah, so 2012, we were 2-14, and we had the first pick in the draft in 2013. Andy Reid came in and he instilled a winning culture and changed a lot of the habits of everybody in the organization. We had a different process in drafting at that point. We were more collaborative, and we took to the model of drafting and developing and supplementing free agency when we did, but with the right type of guys. In 2013, it was like Mike DeVito. I don't know if you remember his name, Anthony Fasano, like just tough blue collar guys that were great leaders for the team. And I kind of envision that the same situation here, where we're going to have to fill some holes in free agency, and we want to do it with the right type of guys.
I laughed my tush off internally when I heard that. In fact, I think I started like kind of giggling a little bit when it was like, outside of Mahomes, what did the Chiefs do? He's like, well, we were 2-14 in 2012, and one of our linebackers committed murder and then and then committed murder, and I think it was a murder suicide in the parking lot. And I think that was kind of the moment where it was like, okay, the Chiefs need. I mean, it was a nightmare. And they cleaned house. John Dorsey comes in. They kept him on the staff, Borgonzi. Andy Reid comes in as the coach. And it was a total nightmare situation, and immediately made the playoffs. And he talks about, obviously we decided we were going to be more of a draft and develop team at that point. We decided we were going to bring in the right guys. We're going to bring in guys like Nick DeVito. And I don't know if you remember Anthony Fasano, but those were the guys we were going to bring in. They also brought in Alex Smith. So I heard this, and I heard him make the comment about draft, develop, retain, and it's supplement in free agency, and blah blah blah. And all I'm thinking is, yes, but you traded for Alex Smith. Like, it wasn't like the Chiefs looked at their team and said, hey, we're only going out there and getting Scarbinis. No, they traded 2 second-round picks to go get a quarterback. And the reason I bring that up is because I think there is a narrative with how much Chad Brinker has talked about draft, develop, and retain, and how much Mike Borgonzi has talked about draft, develop, and retain, that now it's almost like we're starting to envision that free agency is bad. Free agency is not bad. Free agency is a way around making up for mistakes. For instance, if you didn't draft well between the years of 2020 and 2019 and 2021, you can make up for it in free agency this past offseason. You want to know why? Because guys that aren't afforded by other teams get to free agency and you can buy them. That's why. So you need a center? Tyler Biadasz and Lloyd Cushenberry were taken into the 2020 draft. Go sign them. So that's what it allows you to do. My problem with the Titans was I didn't feel like the Titans spent appropriately in free agency. I mean, I kept getting peppered all offseason long. They would make a move. Every time they made a move. And the fans would say, what do you think now, Jared? What do you think of Rand now, baby? Let Rand cook. Every time. And I'm like, you just paid $8 million for a running back when you don't have a right tackle. What are we talking about? To me, that's not spending appropriately in free agency. Kansas City spends in free agency. You ever heard of Joe Thuney? I mean, he doesn't play there for free. So, again, when I hear this talk about free agency, I feel like now the Titans are starting to paint a picture for the fans that is free agency, bad, boo, free agency. No. Rand Carthon's, let's just go sign everybody we can. That's bad. Trading a third-round pick for an injured corner, that's bad. Free agency, look at the Commanders. Good. When they played that game on Sunday Night Football against the Buccaneers, and Sunday Night Football is where they do the interviews, or they do the player starting lineups. Jared Stillman, quarterback, Louisville. And so I'm watching the Commanders' defense, and it starts off with Dorrance Armstrong, free agent signing. Then I think there are two defensive tackles, Deron Payne and Jonathan. I think they were already there. They were drafted by the previous administration. Dante Fowler Jr., free agent signing. Frankie Louvu, free agent signing. Bobby Wagner, linebacker, free agent signing. Jeremy Chin, safety, free agent signing. The Commanders went crazy in free agency. Austin Eckler, Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biotish, Olamide Zacchaeus, Noah Brown. The Commanders, Marcus Mariota, the Commanders spent. Granted, they didn't spend as much money as you, but they did spend money. They did go out and get free agents. But again, to the point of what old buddy Borgonzi was talking about there, about, we wanted to get the guys that fit the culture. We want to get the blue-collar guys. We want to get Nick DeVito and Anthony Fasano to come in there.
All the other Italian free agents.
Hey, it's like getting Paulie in there, get Paulie Walnuts in there, whatever. But again, as he's talking about that, there's a lot of truth that, hey, free agency's not bad. And I want to make sure everybody knows this, because I don't think they're going to be this way, but free agency is not bad. Free agency, good. Paying T. Higgins, who's never healthy, $120 million? I don't know about that. That's the difference. 615-737-1025. Let's go to Trey, who's up next here on our program. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey, go ahead.
Hey, buddy, how you doing today?
Good.
Hey, I just wanted to say, man, that I really, his words, those words that he was saying today that you was running seems really generic, in the fact that he was just like, oh, okay, well, we're all gonna take, all gonna have a piece of, ideas and picking the players and stuff like that. And it just sounds fishy. It just really, really sounds fishy. It sounds like neither one of those guys have the skill sets to go out and determine who the good players are. And I'm just scared of it, Jared. And you have a good day, buddy. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Trey. I don't think there's any way you could judge from that press conference that Mike Borgonzi doesn't have a clue. Now, does that mean that Mike Borgonzi has a clue? I'm not ready to commit to that. But again, in order to, Colin Cowherd said this one time, and it really stuck with me, when he said that it takes a while for good to reveal itself. You can have a good game. It doesn't mean you're a good player. It doesn't take bad long to reveal itself. If you put me at quarterback on Sunday, I don't think it'd take very long to realize that I'm bad. Good, it's like, hey, C.J. Stroud had a good rookie year and he had an okay second year. Is C.J. Stroud gonna be an elite quarterback? I mean, let's see. I don't know. I try to figure that. Good takes a while to figure out. Bad's pretty obvious right away. So the only thing that really could have been ascertained today is if Mike Borgonzi absolutely bombed the press conference. And it's really hard to bomb a press conference when you have no record to be called out on. That's why today was harder for Chad Brinker to do that closed door on the record media session, because he was here the last 2 years when they won 9 games. Borgonzi wasn't. Nobody'd be upset about Borgonzi. It's harder when you have a record that you have to defend. Well, you don't have to defend a record. It's easy to say, we're going to be built on good culture. We're going to go out there. We're going to get guys in here who are going to make a difference. We're going to get smart players that play the game the right way. We're going to get guys out there that catch the ball. We're going to get guys out there that run the ball. We're going to get guys out there that take the ball away. We're going to go out there and get kickers that make kicks. We're going to go out there and do all this. Again, they say all that. That's easy to say. And so I don't think there's anything that could have been said today that says he doesn't have a clue. But again, I mean, I'm not going to walk out of there and say that, oh, yes, we've got our guy. Because that's what fans do. The term I hate the most. Well, I don't hate it the most. Every now and then it is applicable, and I will tell you, okay, that's legit. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers, home run hire. The guy's been to the Super Bowl as an NFL head coach. He just won the national title in college. Everybody would like to have Jim Harbaugh, and you got it. But when a guy goes from assistant general manager to general manager, and the fans of that team say, home run hire, I think, oh, good God. Oh, Jesus. Every single 615-737-1025 here on the program, 615-737-1025. And I will say this, as far as the takeaways from the news conference, trying to read between the lines. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
Can you give us maybe a specific example of somebody or a couple guys that you helped their case with the Chiefs as that guy wound up being part of the roster there?
Been there a long time. This process, it starts at these all-star games. We sit in meetings. So when people say, he stood up on the table for this player or that player, we made the decisions long before the draft came. There's certain people, certain players along the way that, we have different opinions on. But at the end of the day, we're making that decision. I would never stamp my name on any player there.
There you go. That was Mike Borgonzi today. And I got to say this. One texter into the text line says that a positive in the news conference was Borgonzi mentioned building the offensive and defensive lines. Dude, I sat through the press conference, and I can tell you, I did not hear one meaningful thing. That, again, you guys know me. I try to, did he say that? Did he mean this kind of thing? And I did not see one single meaningful thing that came out of the press conference today, other than the fact that Borgonzi knows what the talking points are, and he stuck to them. He knows draft, develop, retain. Let's not make a big deal about free agency. Let's conveniently forget the fact that we added Alex Smith that first year in Kansas City, and then talked about how great the collaborating was in Kansas City, even though John Dorsey got fired after the 2017 draft when they took Patrick Mahomes, and that the same day John Dorsey got fired, Andy Reid got a contract extension. Sound like a power struggle to you? 615-737-1025. So other than those kind of misrememberings that apparently I remember and I wasn't there, apparently other than that, there wasn't really anything that I took away from it. I mean, he gets up there and he talks about, we want to play fast and violent. Well, duh. Everybody wants to play that way. We want to play slow. Go out there and get me a receiver that runs a 5.2 flat. Come on. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Joey from Bellevue says, I wish that the new GM would have been on your show. I hear he will be on with Adam, Willie, and D-Mace. He will be on DVD tomorrow, Ian, I believe 12:30.
I believe that is correct. Yep.
12:30 tomorrow, Mike Borgonzi on DVD. He says, I would pay money to listen to you interview Mike Borgonzi with a Boston accent. Now, I would not do the Boston accent if Mike Borgonzi came on the show. But here's the thing. You got to be very careful with what I'm about to say here. Because I think our midday show's good at interviewing. And I'm not going to sit there and tell you that I don't think they can do the job. I mean, last year, the Titans put L'Jarius Sneed on with the midday show, and we wanted to know about whether or not they would sign a waiver for the knee on the injury guarantee. And Caroline held his feet to it. And Derek asked him about the knees. And, again, they weren't asking about the Drake and Kendrick beef. They know how to do this job. But when it comes to me interviewing general manager, coach, etc., number one, it's very easy when you don't have a record that people here are already upset about. So, again, Borgonzi comes on the show, and we're not going to grill him. What can we grill him about? He hasn't done anything wrong with the Titans. Now, my questions for Borgonzi would be very similar to my questions for Brian Callahan last year, which got a lot of play. If you'll remember, I asked Brian Callahan when he got hired about the Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase debate they had in Cincinnati, knowing that there could be something here as far as Bowers, Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, etc. So I asked him that specifically there. The thing I would ask Borgonzi is, could you guys have been as successful in Kansas City without Alex Smith? Because I think everybody wants to talk Mahomes. And he did talk today about the importance of the development of Mahomes and how it was hard for them to sit Mahomes on the bench that first year, but he needed to sit on the bench. Can you do that without Alex Smith? Of course not. And the reason I bring up Alex Smith is because I was stunned when I went and looked at how similar the numbers Alex Smith at San Francisco is to Sam Darnold throughout this point in Darnold's career. So when Andy Reid and John Dorsey got to Kansas City, they had the number 1 pick. They released Matt Castle at quarterback. They didn't have a quarterback, just like you don't have a quarterback now. I don't care that they'll say that Will Levis is on the roster. I don't care. They don't have a quarterback. Will Levis is not going to be on the team next year. Forget about Will Levis. It doesn't matter. Move on. So they got rid of Matt Castle, so they didn't have a quarterback, and the draft stunk that year for quarterbacks. I believe the quarterbacks in that class, off the top of my head, Ian, E.J. Manuel in the first round, Geno Smith in the second round, Mike Glennon in the third round, Matt Barkley in the fourth round. I think now there were some Scarbinis in like the seventh round, but I think that was it in the 2013 draft. So Kansas City didn't have a quarterback and they had the number 1 pick. So are you going to just reach and take, well, screw it. E.J. Manuel might be a first rounder, second rounder. E.J. Manuel. They didn't do that. They traded 2 second-round picks to acquire Alex Smith. And Alex Smith's numbers, when he got acquired by the Chiefs, he was 29 years old with 76 starts under his belt. He was 38, 36, and 1. 38, 36, and 1 is what? Practically 500?
Yep.
Sam Darnold is 35 and 38 in 73 starts, which is practically 500. So, again, Alex Smith had made 76 starts and was 2 games over 500. Sam Darnold's made 73 starts and is 3 games under 500. Do you see how similar this kind of thing? They traded the 34th pick and another second rounder to get Alex Smith. And then I assume they gave Alex a contract. So when you're in this spot, could you do that without Alex Smith? Could you have built the culture in Kansas City? Could you guys have done that without Alex Smith? And then is Darnold this Alex Smith? Now, you can't talk about Darnold because Darnold's technically under contract with Minnesota, but that's kind of the question here that I have with the whole Kansas City thing. But I can't grill him because there's nothing to grill him about. And here's the other thing. I wonder how Borgonzi's going to handle this. There are times where I think I'm going to interview somebody and it's going to get contentious or it's going to get angry, and I'm prepared for that. Because again, I have my opinions and my beliefs, and I am willing to stand by them. But when it comes to some of these interviews, like with Barry Trotz, sometimes this year it's been so bad. I thought there were some times where I thought, hey, I was going to have to grill him and hold him accountable. And 6 questions in, I'm like, my God, I feel bad for this guy. I'm like his therapist now. More of your phones. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you guys want to weigh in on this. Plus the YouTube chat's all mad about this whole Sam Darnold thing. We'll touch on it. Stillman and Company, 105 The Game.
How familiar are you, Mike, I guess, with the current personnel on this team, and what's the process like in kind of making it your own?
Yeah, so I knew a lot of these players coming out of college when I studied them coming out for the draft. Of course, I watched a lot of them here this season before I prepped for the interview. There's some talent on this roster, but we're a 3-win football team right now. So that's not good enough. And we're going to have to look, everywhere to improve it, whether that's upgrading starters or upgrading depth. And I'll get to sit down more here with the coaches and get a better understanding of all the players. But there's some talent on this roster. We're going to have to upgrade some positions, though.
That was Mike Borgonzi today. Let me say this. There is not a lot of talent on this roster. There's Jeffrey Simmons, who's talented. And boy, Chad Brinker, talk about prepared remarks. One thing Chad Brinker talked about, both in the radio interview he did this morning and what he did with us in the media in that kind of on the record, but not on camera video kind of thing, is he was really hot for the way that Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons played last year. Like, homegrown players like Harold Landry. That's what we need. Okay. As far as that's concerned, I would say they probably need some better players than Harold Landry, but that's me. Here's what's going to happen, though, because this always happens. There's a lot of guys on this team that you guys like that this guy's going to get rid of, and there's going to be like some, how could they get rid of that guy? Because it always happens, and I cannot wait to see who some of these guys are going to be. Like, I cannot wait to see if he's going to get rid of these tight ends and get a real tight end. Oh, my goodness gracious. Phone lines here on the program. Jordan in Nashville says, Jared, I hear you on the Sam Darnold thing, but if you go 500 and drafted 16, how do you get your elite quarterback? Outside of Lamar Jackson, every other big AFC quarterback was drafted in the top 10. Also, by the time the Chiefs got Alex Smith, I'm pretty sure they already had big playmakers like Kelsey, Hill, and Hunt, as well as a strong defense. I believe they did not have any of those guys when they acquired Alex Smith. They did have a good team, though. Like, they did have, at that point in time, they did have guys, and I say a good team. They had a terrible team record-wise, but they did have some good players. Like, Eric Berry was on the team back then, and Dwayne Bowe was on the team back then. And I remember specifically that 2012 Chiefs team that went 2-14, and they made a big deal because they had like 6 Pro Bowlers, even though they were just god-awful. And I think that was when people were like, the Pro Bowl sucks, because the Chiefs went 2-12 and had all these Pro Bowlers on it under Romeo Crennel. In fact, I'm going to pull it up right now and see, because they did have some solid players. They had better players, I think, than the Titans had.
I mean, they had Jamal Charles still and Dwayne Bowe. Yeah.
6 Pro Bowlers for a 2-14 team. Jamal Charles, Tamba Ali, Justin Houston, Derek Johnson. Derek Johnson was freaking good. Derek Johnson, Eric Berry, and Dustin Colquitt. And Jamal Charles was a second-team All-Pro. So they had some players on that team. But they did not have Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce or any of those guys. They drafted those guys. And they were 2-14. So here's what I'll say. The Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs are playing in the AFC title game. This is the second time they've met in the title game, and I believe this is like the 4th time in the last 5 years they've met in the playoffs. They met in the title game in 2020. They had that incredible shootout in 2021. Joe Burrow beat Buffalo in 2022, so they didn't play then. And last year, Tyler Bass missed the field goal, and so this will be the 4th time in 5 years that Buffalo and Kansas City have gone toe-to-toe for the AFC. Do you know that both Buffalo and Kansas City made the playoffs the year before they drafted their star quarterbacks? Buffalo made the playoffs in 2017 for the first time since the Music City Miracle. And I believe it was on a Hail Mary at the end of the season. And they made the playoffs. And they had Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, and they went on the road to Jacksonville, and they got beat. But the Bills had walked in that season, and they had decided they were going to draft a quarterback. They were going to get a young quarterback. Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane had decided we're getting a young quarterback. So they did all the scouting all that year which, by the way, Chad Brinker said today that he's already seen 50 prospects in person, which I don't have a hard time believing when Ohio State's got like 9 of them at one time. But it's like, are you doing the scouting or are you just kind of the liaison to ownership, which I'm not sure I totally understand. But I go back to the Bills. They had decided, hey, we're taking a quarterback this year. So we're going to scout the crap out of all of these quarterbacks. Whether it's Lamar, whether it's Allen, whether it's Mayfield, whether it's Darnold. So they did. They did all their homework on these guys. And supposedly the guy they loved the most was Josh Allen. And so they traded their starting left tackle to move up in the first round with Cincinnati. Then they traded 2 second-round picks to move up to 7 to draft Josh Allen. And then they developed him. He was not a finished product. He was terrible the first year. They made the playoffs in spite of Josh Allen the second year. But again, they had a plan. And they implemented the plan. Kansas City got beat by the Titans the year before with Alex Smith, and then they launched Mahomes. But the year that they drafted Mahomes, they were the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs. And the only reason they weren't the number 1 seed is because Mike Mularkey and the Titans went into Arrowhead in December and beat them on a 60-yard Ryan Suckup field goal. So before you tell me, well, if we get Sam Darnold, Jared, what are we going to do? How are we going to get our elite guy? The 2 teams playing in the AFC this year, in the AFC title game, 4th time in 5 years that these two have battled kind of at the end, both made the playoffs before they got their guy. Lamar was taken at the end of the first round, only Joe Burrow. And if you want to throw C.J. Stroud in there, you can. But Burrow and Stroud are the only examples of we sucked and we got bailed out. So, make of that what you will. One texter says, I bet we'd have Brock Bowers if Mike Borgonzi was here in the 2024 draft. There's no way to know what he would have done in the 2024 draft. He didn't even have the authority where he was to be making those kind of decisions. Texter says, the Titans knocked out Travis Kelce in the playoff game when they beat Alex Smith. That did, in fact, happen. I remember, not necessarily proud of this, but I remember Kelce was killing them in the first half, and they couldn't cover him. And then all of a sudden, I think it was Jonathan Cyprien who stunk. Jonathan Cyprien went helmet to helmet on Kelce. Kelce fell right to the ground, got up, took 2 steps, stumbled, and fell down. And as a fan on my couch, I literally hopped up and was like, concussion protocol! Get him out! Get him out! Concussion protocol! And they sent Kelce to the locker room, and the Titans came back, won the game. Not sure I should be happy about that, but that was how I reacted at the time. One texter says, I don't believe this much, but what if behind the scenes Brinker was telling Amy about how Rand was messing up, and she said, let's see, and then he was proven right? I mean, I think the Titans should have come out and basically said that Rand was the problem. If in fact they believe that Rand was the problem, which I think they do, and their actions make it pretty obvious, I think they should have come out and just said it. And I don't know if they wanted to not hurt his feelings, or if they didn't want to make him look bad for other teams, or if they didn't want, but I think they should have just said, hey, Rand Carthon stunk. And that's why. And I have a hard time, chastising him for getting rid of Carthon. My issue was keeping Brinker, who was hired by Carthon, and this idea that Brinker, is different than Carthon. It's hard for me to believe. Trust me. I will tell you that if I was in politics and I was somebody's vice president, I probably wouldn't agree with everything that person did. But it'd be really hard for me not to run on their record because I'm their vice president. And that's how I feel about Brinker with Rand. He was Rand's vice president. Although technically Rand was vice president, he's president. But you know what I mean? He was Rand's vice president. So that does bother me at least a little bit. All right, Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, and presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Yes, the Titans introduced a general manager today. No, we don't know exactly how much authority he has or does not have, but that's okay. It's still 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means Jared versus Joe. In for Caroline Fenton, however, today is Adam Vingan. Adam Vingan, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm going to take this opportunity to shamelessly plug the fact that Mike Borgonzi will join DP tomorrow at 12:30.
Exactly, 12:30 for Mike Borgonzi on DVD, which we're very, very, very excited about. Joseph Robinette Rexroad Jr. is with us here on the program as well. So without further ado, it's time for Jared versus Joe.
Big discussions.
What's the deal with this quad?
Bigger arguments.
I was right. I had my finger on the pulse of this team.
It's so dumb. It's time.
Oh, it was the cap. Cap.
For Jared versus Joe.
For you, this is actually kind of well-reasoned.
Brought to you by First Horizon Bank. Big bank muscle. Small bank hustle. And by Pella Windows and Doors.
We make the rules around here now.
Now on Stillman and Company.
Let's get it on.
Adam Vingan in for Caroline Fenton. The floor is yours.
Okay. First question, I will allow Joe to go first since Jared has home show advantage. And I also feel bad for Joe because I got to look at that wicked bandage on his head earlier today. And
by the way, did that not look like that? Yesterday, I was seeing the bandage on the camera. I'm like, put a hat on. It looked like Joe had like a giant, like
a lobotomy
panty liner on his head. Like what was going on over there? Joe, what did you do?
I actually kind of wish for a lobotomy every week around 5:30. The tailgate of a rental car corner caught me and sliced me open.
No good. Okay, Adam, go.
All right, Joe. An open-ended question for you. The most illuminating thing you heard from Mike Borgonzi and or Chad Brinker today was what?
Oh my goodness. Well, let me tell you, pickings are slim, and there was nothing wrong with the press conference. I followed along with the Brinker, and I've read the whole transcript, which at least the Titans sent that out, and that actually was, at least it was, some interesting stuff. At least on the back and forth of, okay, we all figure this out, what the process is. But as far as illuminating, I think I would go with the Brinker assertion, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Jared. I guess he said it with you guys, but it was brought up to Borgonzi at his press conference about basically the goal of all the picks they want and how many they want in the top 100. Because when I heard that, I said, oh, okay, so they're definitely trading the number one pick, because I don't think they can pull that off if they don't trade the number one pick. So now, of course, Borgonzi said, yeah, it's possible. And he also mentioned he has some congratulatory texts that are like, hey, we'll be talking. So when I hear that, I get it. I get the idea they absolutely need picks. They need draft capital. They need young players on this football team. I felt a little stronger about maybe that they're already drifting toward, okay, how are we going to move this number one pick, and what are we going to get back for it? That would be my answer, because as far as all the, I took this job because of ownership. Oh, really? The owner who's not there, but that's why you took the job. Cool. Or, we got to get tough, fast, smart. I was like, I think that's a total Mike Vrabel line. Everybody says a lot of the same stuff at these things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually glad you brought that up. I think Brinker said something along the lines of he wants 30 picks over the next 3 drafts, and he wants 12 in the top 100 or something like that is what he said. So I have 2 separate, that illuminated for 2 totally different reasons. The first is Borgonzi was asked what he's looking for in a quarterback, and he said all the same things everybody almost always says about accuracy and decision-making and being a leader. But he talked about mobility. And that's important to me because the two guys coming out, one has a lot more mobility than the other, talking about Ward compared to Sanders. And secondly, Aaron Rodgers has no mobility. Kirk Cousins has no mobility. Sam Darnold does not have a lot of mobility. I would put Darnold kind of similar to Shedeur. Like, they can move, but they can't maneuver around in the pocket the way Mahomes or Burrow or some of these other guys do. So I thought that was pretty revealing. You know, we talk about Aaron Rodgers or maybe Sam Darnold or if they don't take a quarterback, but neither of those guys are very mobile. So that was kind of the first thing that I kind of heard and was like, oh, well, if mobility is important, then maybe that takes them out for Sam Darnold. Maybe that takes them out for Shedeur Sanders, and maybe that puts them in for Cam Ward. So that was one of them. The other thing was at the end of the media availability with Brinker, the one that you guys didn't hear, but Joe has read. Brinker said that Mike Borgonzi was going to be making the draft picks. And then Brinker said something along the lines of, does anybody in here not understand? Now we're all on the same page, right, about how the Tennessee Titans are run. Does anybody have, and he was doing it in a rhetorical sense, and I just said, he was like, so we're all on the same page now. And I just go, no. I'm like, because you just told him, and I pointed at Nick Suss, I go, you just told him that Borgonzi's making the draft picks, but what if you love somebody and he loves somebody, then what are you going to do? And it was almost like the fact that the Titans, after the Mike Vrabel experience, after last year and the confusion and the ambiguity and the roles of who's really doing what and who's not doing what, that the Titans would say, don't you guys all understand now? The fact that they would think that we all understand. It's like, wait a minute. No, we don't understand because we were told, you know, oh, yeah, no, Rand's in charge. But then we're told, no, Rand's not. Bill Callahan picked this guy. And it's like, what? And so I thought that was pretty illuminating that the Titans still seem to think that who has final say of the team. After what we went through with Vrabel, after what we went through last year, they still think it's kind of like this. I mean, do you guys not understand? It's like, no, we don't understand, Chad. So that was illuminating in its own right.
Joe, any retort?
No, I don't really have any issue with any of that.
I do wonder how that interaction came up on the transcript because I didn't see the transcript. I don't get the transcripts. So I don't think I got the transcript of the Chad Brinker availability. Maybe I did. Hold on. Nope, I didn't get it. So I haven't gotten the transcript. I do wonder how that looks of where I cut Brinker off because he was like, everybody understands, right? I'm like, no, everybody does not understand Chad.
All right, next question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm looking for it now, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really make that clear. Okay, go ahead, Vingan.
So my next question to Jared, which he was already touching on, was, did the Titans provide enough or any clarity regarding their power structure? But since Jared answered that question, I'll pivot. And correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm paraphrasing. At one point during the news conference, Mike Borgonzi said that in Kansas City, we didn't care about titles, as in the titles that each person in the front office held. Jared, you go first. Do you believe him when he says that people in Kansas City did not care about titles? And do you think that will matter in Tennessee?
I think he's lying. I mean, for starters, if the title didn't matter, then why did he leave? Like if the title doesn't matter, I'm assistant general manager and everything's great here in Kansas City and we've got Mahomes and we'll be good every year and we're going for a three-peat. Why did he leave to go be general manager? I mean, like, again, we don't care about titles. Really? Because John Dorsey
probably to get money. To get money would be my guess, but keep going.
Sure. John Dorsey was general manager. And then all of a sudden, after the 2017 draft, John Dorsey got fired. Brent Veach got made the general manager, and Andy Reid got a contract extension. So we collaborated on everything. There were never any problems in Kansas City. These titles didn't matter. I bet if you went to Andy and you said, hey, Andy, we're going to take your title away. We're not going to make you head coach anymore. I'm not sure Andy would be okay with that. In fact, if you were to tell Andy, hey, Andy, we're going to actually have Borgonzi make the decisions around here, I'm not sure Andy would like that. So when I hear something like, oh, yeah, the titles didn't matter. The titles didn't matter in the front office there. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't. That's why you left to come here for a better title. To the Titans, sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, he even talked about, the things that he was doing for Veach, right? And then now how he'll be running the meetings and all that stuff. So yeah, it's just more stuff that you say at press conferences, right? I mean, everybody collaborates and there's no ego. And Koharski asked him about, can you name a guy or two that you had? I would never put my name on a player. It's all that stuff. I mean, it's to me, it's GM speak. Just like we have coach speak and player speak, that's GM speak. But of course, the titles matter. They dictate who does what. And yeah, he came here to get the better title. And of course, it comes with power and money. I'm sure at a much higher rate than he had in Kansas City. So of course it matters.
Here's what I think, again, reading between the lines, I think that when he says the titles don't matter, that's bullcrap. I mean, that's like Vrabel said in his press conference in New England that final say doesn't matter or something. And it's like, okay, Mike, I remember when you didn't have final say here and how you acted like a crybaby. So I don't want to hear this like Vrabel talking about those things not matter. Here's what I really truly believe. I believe that Chad Brinker has final say and that he's told Mike Borgonzi that he's not going to overrule him, that he has made it clear to Mike Borgonzi that, hey, you are in charge of picking the players and I'll back you, that there has been zero indication that they would ever side with Brian Callahan over Mike Borgonzi on a personnel matter. Based off of conversations I've had on the record, things I've heard, kind of behind the scenes a little bit, I have zero doubt. I think Mike Borgonzi thinks I'm going to make the first pick and Chad Brinker is going to say yes to anything I do. I am convinced of it, and I don't know if that's actually going to happen because I brought up the scenario earlier today about Bryant Mix, who Floyd drafted in the second round in 96, who was a bust. Floyd said all the scouts and all the coaches loved him, and he didn't see it. And he was on the clock saying, hey, if all these guys think this guy's so good, he must be good. Let's draft him. And so he drafted him, and he was a bust, and he said, never again would I draft somebody that I don't believe in. And I say this because I do wonder, let's use Cam Ward as the example. If Mike Borgonzi loves Cam Ward, but Chad Brinker just does not see it, and Mike Borgonzi wants to use the number one pick on Cam Ward, and Chad Brinker doesn't believe in Cam Ward in his heart, what's he going to do? And I think it's easy at this point to say, hey, Mike, if you come to this, I know technically I'll have final say, but I want you to be my GM so bad, I'll back you on this. But it is another thing to actually do it when push comes to shove. And I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that they wouldn't draft Cam Ward. That's what I believe. But I think that, and I thought you did a good job of pushing on this at the presser on, okay, here's a scenario, what happens? And then, of course, they're like, well, you don't really understand the process. But to a point, I get what they're saying. So the overruling happens way before the draft, right? Yes. you have to figure that out way in advance. And so when Brinker's like, let the board talk to you, I mean, they've already figured it out. They've already decided. So in that sense, I think that it's a back and forth. If there's really a strong feeling, yes, one way, no, the other way. Yeah, Brinker said that today too, right? Well, I'll go back and watch more film then, right? But I don't think he's necessarily going to go back and watch more film to ultimately 100% of the time, no matter what, agree with the guy he just hired. I think that he does have that power, and I think that he could exercise it. So,
but I believe that Borgonzi is under the belief that Brinker has instilled in him that he will not overrule him.
I'm sure he'll try. I mean, to whatever extent he can, he will try not to, right? But something like that situation you're putting together, which again is very much like, what's the direction of this franchise? It's this way or it's that way. That's a huge decision. And to me, that's got to be that's not a draft night screaming match, right? So in that sense, they're right in what they're saying.
I do
it's
think
semantics.
I do think it's pretty funny how it's like they're sitting there talking about, well, all those decisions are made before the draft. Yeah, I'm not talking about when the 15 minutes starts. I'm talking about when you make those decisions, and if the two people are different, like, then what do you do?
Right, but I mean, for example, think again the great Bedingfield story, which is the day of the second round. He's got a breakfast to start working Robinson and Malarkey to start getting in their ear, like, guys, you got to think about Derrick Henry today, right? That was a day of, that was coming right up on crunch time. Is Xavier Howard going to be there and all that stuff? So I mean, that. That's not like it's all this stuff happens way in advance. I do think something like that, like you've got, right? Like you've got to know. You've got to know way in advance.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to know if they're going to draft one of these two quarterbacks at number one. I think they have to know this before the start of the new league year. Because if you're not, then you have to get in the mix on Darnold and Rodgers and everybody else. More Jared versus Joe to continue next. Stillman & Company, 105 the game.
discussions.
What's the deal with this quad?
Bigger arguments.
I was right. I had my finger on the pulse of this team.
It's so dumb.
It's time
Oh, it was the cap. Cap.
for Jared versus Joe.
For you, this is actually kind of well reasoned.
Brought to you by First Horizon Bank. Big bank muscle. Small bank hustle. And by Pella Windows and Doors.
We make the rules around here now.
Now on Stillman and Company.
Let's get it on!
Adam Vingan is in for Caroline. Adam Vingan, go ahead.
Okay, so it's been a little too chummy for my liking so far. So this is the part where I throw the live grenade into the proceedings. Joe, you go first. Conspicuous by her absence at today's news conference was Titans controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk. We looked this up on our show today. She was in attendance when Rand Carthon was introduced. She was in attendance when Brian Callahan was introduced, but she was not there for the Mike Borgonzi news conference. Big deal, little deal, or no deal?
Oh, it's a big deal. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a joke. I mean, she can't even, and I'm so disappointed in Jared. I've already blown him up on his phone. For what I heard today, I heard him carrying water for her and making excuses for her, and it's just this disgusting. I mean, you sit here and rip Kaharski for carrying water for Brinker. What have you done for Amy Adams Strunk today? It is absurd that she was not at that press conference today. You just have to show up. Jared, you know, you're a young parent, and so I am not one to give great parenting advice. You know, I've made plenty of mistakes. It's a hard job, but one thing that my dad told me when I was a young father was just try to show up. Just try as much as you can to show up for things. And I've missed a lot of stuff with my kids too, by the way, but I think that's a good thing to have in general. If something's important to you, you don't have to do that much. I mean, look, we'd all love Amy Adams Strunk to talk. That'd be great. Field questions, but not show. Is this not an important hire? I mean, are you blaring in neon lights? This actually isn't the GM job because the owner doesn't even bother to show up. And I promise you, people who work for that organization think the same thing. It's a joke that she couldn't be bothered to show up today. And I'm so disappointed in you for just dismissing it.
Okay, so couple of thoughts here. Number one, I don't care that Amy Adams Strunk wasn't there. What would she have added to being there?
Doesn't matter. Oh, so this is what you do when people are like, "Oh, what are they going to say?" Well, you ask the question anyway. What? I don't care, Jared.
You can't ask her questions, Joe.
She just got the most public money in NFL history, and she can't even be there.
Are you gonna Phil Williams her? Like, should we Phil Williams her? Like, wait for her to show up and then walk with her and ask her, you know, hey, why is Chad Brinker in charge? What's so great about him for you to put him in there? Should we do that?
You're trying to put this, you're diverting the conversation to other things. I'm just talking about her showing up and introducing people, and that, like, she's done that. That's what she does. That's what she does before today. She shows up.
I believe that Mike Borgonzi is the right guy for us to be on, for us to get good again. That would have been enough for you.
No, Jared. No, it would not have been enough. But not even doing that is a freaking joke. And the fact that you can't see that or call that out is pathetic.
I just don't care if the owner's there or not. I do not care. In fact, my hope is, and I don't trust Brinker, but my hope is that she will stay as far away from anything that matters going forward. Because
that doesn't.
When she decided she was going to be more involved is when she fired John Robinson, and all the winning, as I predicted that day, all the winning went away forever. And so if she's now staying the hell, if she's learned her lesson, that, you know what, going Leroy Jenkins in the middle of a season when we're at 7-5 in first place, and I can just say, screw the general manager because I'm mad that A.J. Brown spanked the goalpost with a towel, then you know what? If she's saying, you know, I got to stop doing that. I got to stop getting won over at the NFL accelerator meetings by this bozo Rand Carthon. I got to stop changing my mind every 20 minutes. Brinker, again, I don't know why she picked Brinker for this, and I wouldn't pick Brinker for this, but Brinker, you're in charge of doing it. Just tell me how much, and I'll be at the game. That's all I care about. I do not care that she was not there today. And if this is a sign that she is being less involved in football, the better for the Titans, which is the only thing I care about.
We better take a break, Adam. He's got to rest he's carrying so much water. We got to take a little break for Jared. I mean, this is so sad.
It is so embarrassing that you would compare me not giving a rat's ass about the owner being there to Paul Kaharski saying you can blame Rand, blame Callahan, but you can't blame Brinker no matter what. And comparing those two is so intellectually dishonest, Joe.
I mean, well, Jared, there's no diverting this embarrassment. It is on you, and I mean, it's so ridiculous. The owner of the team that, again, just got the most public money in history, that is begging her
So if she paid for the stadium herself, like Robert Kraft, you'd be fine with her not being there?
No, she's still profiting more than anyone. Not at all. But I'm just saying, just add that to let's keep that in mind. No, she is going to, anyone
Was
who
Herb
owns an NFL
Fritch at the
team
press
is going to
conference
make a
when they
lot of
announced
money.
Andrew Burnett as the coach?
Yeah, this whole Herb Fritch crap, it's not comparable. That's intellectually dishonest.
How?
And you know it.
So,
Well, first
so
of
people
all,
said for years, Adam, how much, when you were the beat writer of the Predators, how much did it burn your ass that if you wanted to talk to ownership, that they sent out Sean Henry whenever you wanted to talk to Herb Fritch?
Yes.
It
Jared,
certainly did at times.
Okay,
Adam and
so
it
as
burned our
Adam
asses
says,
both.
it burned
No
his tush.
question.
So I have said
me too.
for
I wrote
forever.
about it. Adam wrote about it. We worked together, and absolutely, it bothers. But you can't compare that to this. That's still an ownership
I have
group.
said
I
forever.
think with Haslam, it can be more comparable moving forward. But that's not the same as this, and you know
Alex Doherty wanted to talk to Haslam when this team got off to the crap start, and he got Sean Henry. So I said this about Herb Fritch.
So you were
so
you're all good with all that then.
I like Herb Fritch, but the way I view this is Herb Fritch bought this hockey team. He and the group of owners that bought this hockey team to save it from leaving town. He never wanted to own the team. He doesn't want to be treated like he owns the team. He never cared about that. He just did not want this team to leave the city. So he put up his money in order to keep it here, and he doesn't want to be owner. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with Herb Fritch saying Sean Henry speaks for ownership all the time. And so, again, if
Adam and
Amy's
I
going to
aren't.
stay
So
more out
too
of
bad
this,
you're on the wrong side of this too.
if Amy's going to stay more out of this, like, I'm here for it.
That's just stupid. That doesn't mean, and it doesn't mean she's going to stop making rash decisions. It means she can't even face the public because the embarrassment has gotten so bad. She can't even face the public on what's supposed to be a happy, exciting day when you hire a GM. You think this was some sign that now all of a sudden she's just?
Do you think she's more embarrassed today? You think she's more embarrassed today than she was last year when they fired Mike Vrabel and everybody was talking about her across the country about how stupid she was for firing the great Mike Vrabel?
I don't know. I just know that we can talk about owners talking to media or not. There are actually a lot of them who do, but a lot of them who don't. Not showing up, not even being in the building for a huge hire like this. Again, it's this era. I know that the eras are year long now with Amy Adams Strunk, but like that's what these are. Coach hires, GM hires, they are big deals. They are moments. They are touchstone moments in your franchise's history. To not show up to it, what is she, combing a horse? I mean, it's a joke. And this is almost as bad as you playing the Steve Underwood audio. Well, it was a really good coach search. Well, Mike Mularkey finally won out, but I tell you, it was really tough. Like it was some kind of, just carrying water for the team again. Why don't you stop just believing what they tell you and think critically, Jared? How about try that?
They haven't told me anything about Amy not being there. I just don't care. I do not care that she's not there. You've taken the team talking point. The team talking point would be like, Amy has empowered Chad so much and believes in Chad's vision so much that Chad and Burke represent Amy and I didn't say any of that. That would be the carrying water.
But you're buying it.
I'm just telling you, I don't.
Hook, line, and
I don't
sinker.
care.
There
I
you
do
go.
not
Okay.
care that
Be
the
a
owner
sucker
was
then.
there.
Be a sucker. Okay.
Adam,
I know
what's
you
next?
don't. I'm sad.
Okay, I just have to catch my breath there. I was laughing hysterically while on mute. Okay, I believe we have time for one more. I saw this from our friend John Glennon. He tweeted, according to, I don't know what Sports Betting AG is, but according to Sports Betting AG, the odds on the number 1 draft pick changed drastically today based on the comments from Chad Brinker talking about how the Titans can't pass up on a generational talent. According to this, at 8 a.m., the odds of the Titans drafting Travis Hunter were plus 1,100. After he said that, they fell to plus 110. Jared, you go first. Did that comment change your opinion at all on what the Titans may do with the number 1 overall pick?
It didn't change my opinion at all as to what they might do at number 1, but I think that Adam Schefter tweeting it out as if he was at the press conference, or not even press conference, the deposition of Chad Brinker today, that is what changed everybody else's opinion. So I was in the media room after that sit down with Brinker, and Terry McCormick and everybody else that was there. You know, Schefter had a tweet about the passing on a generational talent or whatever. And I was not even aware that those odds had flipped, but that's all because of one Schefter tweet that flipped those odds. I mean, there's no way that you can get Travis Hunter and have 12 picks in the top 100 in the next 3 drafts. It is physically impossible to get both. And so I heard him talk about we can't pass on a generational talent. I think he meant that just like we can't pass on Andrew Luck. We can't pass on Jaden Daniels. I mean, I don't know if Travis Hunter is a generational talent. I'm not sure there's a generational talent in this draft, but no, it didn't change it for me, but Adam Schefter tweeting it out clearly changed it for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's like the Reddit, some Reddit post about Will Levis, and all of a sudden his odds totally changed that he was going to be the number 1 pick, right? 3 years ago. I mean, it's just weird stuff like that happens. If there is a generational talent in this draft, I think most people would tell you it's Hunter. I think he's the closest thing to that. So I guess you could take it that way, but I didn't necessarily take it that way. Look, you've got to leverage things, and even if you want to trade off that pick, well, we just might not be able to resist taking a Travis Hunter. So I don't put much stock into it.
Adam, who wins?
Okay, so here is my stance on the whole Amy Adams Strunk not showing up thing. I mentioned this on our show today. If she wants to become the missing owner, where all she does is sign the checks, that's fine. But she has to stay that way. If the Titans become good again, she can't come out of hiding and go to tailgates and be a front-facing owner
she
again.
will.
If you're out.
If you're
out, you're out. So Joe says it's a big deal that Amy Adams Strunk didn't show up today. Jared says it's no deal that Amy Adams Strunk didn't show up today. I say it's a little deal that she did not show up today. Therefore, I'm closer to Joe. Joe wins this week.
Whoa. According to Price is right.
Finally,
according to Price is right, Joe went over. Joe went over, and if you go over,
this isn't the.
I'm a little closer to Joe on this. Even if it was symbolic, she should have just been there. Now, we don't know why she wasn't there. When Derek and I were talking about this today, somebody texted in and said, well, maybe she was sick. And then I said, well, if she was sick, I do think that Brinker would have said, Amy would have loved to have been here, but she's under the weather. We wish her well, all of that stuff. But they didn't say that, which makes me think that she just skipped it. And I think just the symbolism of the owner not being there, I'm not as upset about it as Joe, but I'm slightly closer to Joe than I am to Jared on.
I could not give a rat's ass. The fact that Joe's talking about the public money for the stadium is ridiculous. Joe, congratulations on
You're
finally winning.
pathetic.
You had to bring in a ringer in Adam Vingan in order to get a victory.
Because
You're the one
you
that
gotta-
brought me in, by the way. You're the one that asked me to do it.
You have a ringer every week. You have a ringer every week. This should be on my show every other week with a different judge. Thank you, Adam. Good fair judging.
Congratulations to Joe Rexrode on the
I
program.
tried.
By the way, let me just say this, and I'm not going to name names here because, there is somebody with the Titans who I wish we could get in here for a Jared versus Joe and a Jared versus this person because, again, I know Joe won today, but I think that was more ceremonial than anything else. There is somebody with the Titans that I actually enjoy arguing with more than you have any idea. Like, it is actually fun. Now, I win those arguments too, but it is freaking fun. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. I want to congratulate Joe Rexroad for what I think is his first win of Jared versus Joe in 2025. So I actually was thinking about this during the break because, again, Joe won off the fact that Amy Adams Strunk was not at the press conference today. And Joe's like, how could this owner not be there when she's getting the most public money? And how could she? And I'm like, what would you have wanted her to do outside of get up there and say, I'm really thankful that we have Mike Borgonzi in as our general manager. And I believe that Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker and Brian Callahan are the missing ingredients that Titan fans can cheer for years. In Jesus' name, amen. Like, I'm being serious here. What would you have wanted out of her? But the more I think about it, the more I'm happy that she wasn't there today. Because I don't know if you guys saw this, but Ben Johnson of the Chicago Bears walked into the facility yesterday. Ian, did you see the video?
No, I did not.
So Ben Johnson, who called a terrible game on Saturday against the Commanders, who's never coached a day in the NFL as a head coach, walked into the Chicago Bears facility, and every employee got up and cheered on Ben Johnson as he came in and was welcomed with the hero's welcome. And all I can think about is when Rand showed up and every employee was out there cheering on the GM. It was so sanctimonious and so excessive and so embarrassing. It's like, this is the NFL. We do not need to cheer for people who haven't done anything. And I remember when they brought J.C. Latham in off the plane. And it was like, here's J.C. Latham with Will Levis. Oh, it's so cool. I'm like, can you play left tackle? Here's J.C. Latham hugging Amy Adams Strunk and the other two in the lobby. And look at how much I hate all that. So the more I think about it, the more I'm glad she wasn't there. Stay away. Stay in Houston. Let's see if this guy can do it. Let's see if Brinker will let him, and let's see if he can do it. That's all I'm asking for. 615-737-1025. Holy crap, what a comeback by the Predators last night. Stillman and Company, 1025 the game.
Blankenberg behind the goal. Comes out, and that will do it, folks. Predators down 5-1 at one point. Win this one by a 7-5 final.
Predators last night, I guess that's the greatest comeback in franchise history. I'm going to be completely honest with the audience for just a second here, because I almost never do this. Like, I do not watch 82 games in the NHL. That's a lot of games. But if, something happens the night before, I make sure that I go back and watch. There's a lot of times, especially like, this week they got San Jose and Anaheim coming up. And I'll usually kind of like, hey, it's a late game at Anaheim. I'll sleep and then tomorrow morning rewatch what happened the night before so that when I go on the air, I'm prepared and I know what happened. Last night was not necessarily one of those nights because last night was a night here at the Stillman household where it was, we sleep when the baby sleeps. So when it was 4-1 San Jose, Ian, that was a turn it off, call it a night moment for me.
No, I feel you. I think I actually turned it off at the end of the first, did not watch the second, saw it was 5-3 going into the third and turned it back on.
Okay. I was asleep, but I woke up at about midnight. My son screaming like a duck, which is what he does when it's time to eat or time to be changed in the middle of the night. So at about midnight, I woke up and I got on my phone and I saw a tweet from Corey Curtis saying that they had won. And I was like, they won? Holy smokes. And what's crazy about last night's game is if they had lost last night to that crummy Sharks team, especially if they had gotten their ass kicked, that would have been, okay, tank,
Dunzo.
Embrace, it's over, forget about it, whatever. Now they've won 4 in a row. And now they play some bad teams. And I'm really, really worried about getting screwed out of either a good pick or the playoffs. But maybe with the easiest remaining schedule, maybe they can go on another heater like they did last year. And maybe they can squeak back into this thing. I don't think they can, but maybe. And last night, it was, to me, it was, when I went to bed, I thought we'd be coming on, not, the Tigers hired a general manager, but I thought there was definitely going to be some, okay, fat lady singing, and it's time to get some of these, get some bad players up from Milwaukee, put them in there, lose on purpose, pick number 2, take the kid from BC, but they came back to win the game. Then you got to give them credit for that. That's it for us. We're out of here. Preds Insiders is up next. We will be back tomorrow at 2:00.